Chapter 111. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Purple lightning spread out. Although the power of the lightning had already weakened by the time it reached the bottom of the sea, it was still a great provocation to the sea monsters that lived there. It's already a miracle that we didn't cause trouble for outsiders like you. But you actually dared to come here and provoke us. You're courting death. Don't say anything else. Kill him. Whoosh, whoosh. The surface of the water suddenly burst open, and two strong sea demons jumped out of the water. They seemed to be close relatives, and both were some kind of pointy-headed fish. Its body was dozens of feet long, and its scales were thick and dense. Clearly, its defense was astonishing. Its tail, gills, and limbs were neither fish nor fowl. No matter how one looked at it, it looked like a hybrid between a human and a fish. Indeed, the high-level sea monsters of the Netherworld Sea region were all strange, mutated species. It was no wonder that they weren't recognized by the sea monster races and viewed each other with hostility. However, although it was a little strange, the aura of a Gendan could not be faked. The two fish demons were still very powerful. The 100 Nether sword trembled, almost shedding tears of excitement. Master is a good person, bringing me to eat such a delicious meal. No, I'm so happy that I'm going to faint. Although the eyes of the two golden core fish monsters were filled with a blood-red light, it was clear that they had a bit of intelligence. As their eyes fell on Chinyu, they simultaneously revealed a look of vigilance. The monster race's perception of auras was far above that of human cultivators. Although Chinyu hadn't done anything and had restrained his aura, they still felt threatened. This was especially so in facing the two of them right now. He wasn't the slightest bit afraid, and his calm demeanor caused the fish to feel apprehensive. However, they had already come to their door, and they had also jumped out. If they turned around and left now, it would be too embarrassing. How could they continue to stay in this place? The two fish monsters were a bit regretful. As they were hesitating, the 100 Nether sword made their choice for them. Whoosh! The scabbard was unsheathed and slashed down. Putting aside the power, just this aura alone was definitely full marks. But this time, the 100 Nether sword had suffered. Although there were many golden core realm fish monsters in the sea region, they were still absolutely powerhouses. How could it be so easy for you to cut it up like vegetables? As the demonic light erupted, the 100 Nether sword was trapped within. It trembled and found it hard to break free. Bang! A column of water shot out. The 100 Nether sword was bent and sent flying back. The two fish monsters revealed complacent expressions. With the two of us joining forces, it would be easy to deal with you. Although this cultivator hadn't attacked, yet his treasure had already been destroyed, so it didn't seem too difficult to deal with him. Hee, then I'll get rid of him for dinner. But before the two of them could even sneer, the 100 Nether sword flew back at an even faster speed. The blade of the sword was in perfect condition. There wasn't even a mark on it. It didn't look like it was damaged at all. Bang! The 100 Nether sword slashed down. His aura was ferocious, as if he was roaring with his hands on his hips. I'll fight whoever stops me from eating. The corners of Chinyu's lips twitched. You're going to eat me, and yet you don't allow me to resist? This overbearing, and shameless temper. I like it. However, if the 100 Nether sword were to act on its own, it was unknown just how long it would take to wear down these two fish monsters. It was very likely that the fish demon sensed that something was amiss and fled. Chinyu's feet stepped forwards. The air seemed to explode. Like a fierce tiger descending a mountain, he brazenly attacked. Bang, bang! With a loud explosion, the two fish monsters were sent flying backwards. They cried out miserably and spat out blood. The 100 Nether sword took advantage of this opening. Two black lights flashed, and the fish monsters' pitiful cries came to an abrupt end. The 100 Nether sword trembled in the air. A mass of black light covered it, and the sword blade cried out as it swallowed in great gulps. The narration was as follows. Woo woo woo, this is too blissful. I eat, I eat, I eat, I eat, I eat, I eat, as the 100 nether sword gorged itself. Its face filled with intoxication as it absorbed the food. The sea monsters in the 9 nether winding path were strangely enraged. Although Boss Fish and Second Brother Fish were just minor characters, for better or worse, they were still monsters from the 9 nether boundary. If they were slaughtered so easily and cleanly, they would lose face. Revenge was out of the question, but this person and his sword could not be let go. Whoosh! The seawater parted, and the giant crab broke through the surface. Its body was covered in an iron gray carapace, and it waved its pincers. It opened its mouth and roared, its momentum fierce. The sea monsters sneered upon seeing this. Since the crab monster had attacked, the fate of this man and his sword was basically decided. Who didn't know that while the old crab monster wasn't the strongest, its defense and endurance were the most terrifying? But what happened next left the sea monster's jaws hanging open. After a moment of shock, they couldn't help but curse out loud. Qin Yu grabbed the 100 nether sword and turned to leave. Bang! Blood-red flames ignited. Like a meteor, he cut through the horizon and rapidly flew far away. This fellow, he didn't even fight and instead ran away. What a coward, he had no guts. The crab monster was a bit resentful, but he was even more smug. He coughed and looked around. Did you see that? That ruthless fellow that cut down Boss Fish and Second Brother Fish just ran away in fright when facing this old crab monster? What is dignity? What is momentum? What is subduing the enemy without a fight? Do you understand now? The crab monster waved its pincers in high spirits. Then it turned and dove back into the sea. Qin Yu's face was gloomy. He had already stimulated the blood escape art to the limit. The 100 nether sword could feel the chill in its master's heart and obediently remained motionless. Love, go, little, say, Netku just now. When the crab monster broke through the water, Qin Yu felt his heart skip a beat, as if a great calamity was about to befall him. This feeling was inexplicable, but it was also real and intense. It was like a blade had been placed on his body, ready to cut him down at any moment. In that instant, Qin Yu thought of Princess Lushy and the 1,000 thread everknot she used. This woman, she actually hadn't broken the connection. Qin Yu had an impulse to curse out loud. If something were to happen to Princess Lushy, then disregarding the anger of the sea monster races, he would immediately be severely wounded and on the verge of death. In a place like the Netherworld Sea region, to be reduced to such a state, how was that any different from dying? Qin Yu clenched his teeth. The blood-red flames around him burned even more fiercely, and he sped up even more. Somewhere in the Netherworld Sea region, giant waves tumbled about. Deep rumbling sounds came from the bottom of the water. A battle was underway. Princess Lushy's original form was a flood dragon, and she was being besieged by 4 variation sea monsters. Although a flood dragon's body naturally possessed the ability to control seawater, she was far too young and her strength was lacking. Beneath the siege of 4 powerful sea monsters, she could only bitterly persist. In the periphery, several black-robed cultivators sneered. The spirit medicines that the Holy Lord bestowed upon you are truly fierce. They can even temporarily control variation sea monsters. If it weren't for them, wanting to capture that little girl wouldn't have been easy. This voice was familiar. It was the demonic path cultivator Han Shanai. He shook his head, a bit helpless. What a pity a royal woman must have a perfect body in order to be used as a sacrifice. Otherwise, Chi Quan flattered, Elder Han, once you capture the sea monster royal, you will definitely be able to help the Saint Furnace complete its awakening. At that time, the Saint Sun will reward you handsomely, and your cultivation will rise greatly. Han Shanai laughed. After this, I will make some arrangements. I will have the sea monster races blame the death of the princess on that surnamed Qin cultivator. At that time, even if he has 3 heads and 6 arms, he will still die in the sea region. Fellow Taoist Chi will have avenged Fairy Xiang. Chi Quan cupped his hands together. Thank you for Elder Han's brilliant plan. Han Shanai smiled in satisfaction. The Holy Lord had arranged this mission and sent 2 saint sons. This was because he valued the furnace as well as a test for the saint son. He was a follower of the firmament saint sun. If he could help the saint son win, then what could the present rewards be compared to his future prospects? This was the most important thing. A cold light flashed in Han Shanya's eyes. We've already delayed long enough. The little girl doesn't have much monster strength left. Control the 4 sea monsters and capture her no matter the cost. If this were a slaughter, then it would have been over long ago. But capturing someone alive was a technical task. Yes, Elder Han. A demonic path cultivator took out a magical shell and blew into it. Sound waves spread out, and the 4 controlled sea monsters immediately went berserk. Princess Leshy, who was struggling to support herself, was instantly surrounded by danger. Countless wounds appeared on her body, and the smell of flood dragon blood caused the 4 sea monsters to release their instinctive brutality. Their attacks became even more ferocious. A demonic path cultivator took out a bowl-shaped magic tool and absorbed the flood dragon blood that fused into the seawater. This was to prevent the smell of blood from spreading out and attracting other sea monsters. This robbery had clearly been premeditated. Not only could they capture a sea monster royal and use her as a top sacrifice, but they could also shift the blame onto Chinyu and force him to his death. More and more blood flowed out of Princess Leshy. Her body began to turn cold and weak. For the first time, fear appeared in her flood dragon eyes. In order to maintain the dignity of the royal family, no matter how afraid she was, she could maintain her calm and composure in front of others. But in terms of the flood dragon race's age, she was still a little girl in her teens. When death arrived, she would still feel fear. King Father, Queen Mother, Big Brother, where are you? Leshy is about to die. Hurry and save me. Tears flowed out, condensing into round pearls that fell into the dark seabed, as if foretelling her doomed fate. Inexplicably, the princess thought of Chinyu. This was all because of that despicable human cultivator. Otherwise, how could she have fallen to such a state? If I die, King Father and the others will definitely take revenge for me. And you can forget about living either. No, that's not right. The 1,000-thread Evernaut is still here. If I die, even if he doesn't die, he will still lose 7 or 8 layers of skin. At that time, he will definitely be eaten up by the variation sea monsters. As she thought this, Princess Leshy didn't feel any guilt at all. Rather, she felt a bit gratified. That Chin bastard deserved what he got. Suddenly, a fluctuation spread outwards. Flood dragons had an innately sharp perception towards water currents. Princess Leshy looked up with teary eyes. She saw a blood-red beam of light piercing through the seawater, rushing towards her at an astonishing speed. Her eyes widened. That was Bang, a wild strength swept out. The 4 raging sea monsters were sent flying away. The demonic cultivators waiting on the periphery had incomparably ugly complexions, just as they were about to achieve their goal. Where did this bastard come from? He actually dared to meddle in the matters of the demonic path? Was he tired of living? Han Shanya's eyes were icy cold. He was startled for a moment before he sneered again and again. It was this brat. Good, this was far too good. Chi Quan clenched his teeth. Elder Han, please attack and kill him. Han Shanai coldly waved his hand, and the 4 demonic cultivators rushed out. Of course they had to kill him. Otherwise, if news of them surrounding and killing a sea monster royal spread out, then even if they didn't have any evidence, they would still stir up trouble. The Holy Lord had repeatedly warned them that no matter what they did in private, they couldn't tear apart any pretense of cordiality with the sea monster races. However, with this Chin fellow's sudden appearance, their plans would have to change. The human cultivators had gone mad, and Princess Leshy had decided to perish together with them in order to protect herself. This wasn't a bad idea. It was easier for the sea monster races to accept. Moreover, it was simpler and more feasible than the original plan. Chi Quan diabolically grinned. He snatched the conch and blew into it with all his strength, controlling the 4 sea monsters to rush towards Chinyu. Roar, roar, the 4 variant sea monsters roared out. Chinyu's expression was ice cold. He stepped forwards on his own initiative, drawing out the 100 nether sword and pouring magic power into it. Hum! The 100 nether sword excitedly cried out. A faint light began to shine on the black sword blade. The sea monster in front of him had countless tentacles. Just as it was about to wrap around Chinyu, a black light flashed and its body froze. Puff! A massive amount of black liquid sprayed out, causing the entire black water to instantly turn pitch black. Chinyu's hands didn't stop. The 100 nether sword thrust out, sinking into a large mouth that was biting at him. The sword blade pierced through the jaw and straight through the brain. He turned around, avoiding the sweeping claws. The 100 nether sword flew out of his hand, and there was a faint puff. The last sea monster forced its way to Chinyu's side, but what welcomed it was Chinyu's fist. The strength of the demon body was comparable to a hollow nascent soul realm cultivation. With the 2 superimposed together, the sea monster's hard head exploded like a ripe watermelon. And at this time the 4 demonic cultivators had just arrived. As they looked at the black water in front of them, they hesitated. They didn't fear Chinyu, but were worried that they would be accidentally injured by the 4 rampaging sea monsters. Chapter 112. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Chi Quan activated his magic power to blow the conch. He stared at the blackened seawater, his eyes filled with violence and excitement. Kill, kill, kill. Tear him apart. At this moment, a light "Kacha" sound came from his hand. Chi Quan's face stiffened, and he looked down in astonishment. When he saw a crack on the conch, his eyes went wide. Bang! The conch exploded and countless fragments flew out, piercing Chi Quan's head and face. His 2 eyeballs were extremely unlucky, and they exploded on the spot. Ah! He screamed and rolled around in the sea. The few devil cultivators who had rushed out were startled. When they saw Quan Chi's miserable state, their faces paled. Whoosh! The seawater split apart, and Chinyu rapidly rushed out. Before the demonic cultivator could respond, he was sent flying away. The sound of bones breaking made one's scalp tingle. Without a single cough, he fell to the ground like a corpse. With a flick of his sleeve, a massive wave of seawater surged out like a sledgehammer, enveloping the other 2 devil cultivators. The 2 of them screamed as they were crushed. The last demonic cultivator turned to flee, but a black light flashed in front of him. He clutched his neck and spasmed a few times. As he spat out a large mouthful of blood, his body softly fell to the ground. Han Shanya's eyelids jumped up. He suddenly realized that he had greatly underestimated Chinyu's strength. In just a few seconds, he had killed 4 mutant sea monsters, as well as 4 of his subordinates. One had to know that they were all Golden Core cultivators. Han Shanai didn't care about Quan Sheng, who was rolling about in pain. He turned around and fled. It was unknown what magic treasure he used, but his speed was astonishing. In the blink of an eye, he was far away. Chinyu's eyes flashed. His fingers moved, and a talisman broke apart, turning into a beam of light that shot out. His gaze fell onto Quan Chi. As if sensing danger, Quan Chi took out the copper mirror and injected his magic power into it. He screamed, "I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid of you." Hum! The copper mirror shone brightly and shot out a beam of light. All the seawater that it passed through was evaporated into nothingness. Incomparably valiant. Unfortunately, the direction of the beam of light was still a good distance away from Chinyu. With a flick of his sleeve, the water current swept Chi Quan away and ended his life. Then he raised his hand and sucked the copper mirror into his hand. Sure enough, this bronze mirror was the one from the ancient cultivator's cave dwelling. This item should have been in Xiang Ryu's hands, but after he killed her, he couldn't find it. Who would have thought that it would appear in the hands of this demonic cultivator? Feeling the resistance from the copper mirror as well as the faint hostility, Qin Yu had a thoughtful look on his face. His thoughts raced, and in several breaths of time he roughly understood what was happening. Sure enough, there was no such thing as love or hate without reason in this world. The reason why these devil cultivators had come looking for him was because of Xiang Ryu. Thinking about it this way, the hostility from the sea demon race was most likely related to these demonic cultivators. The black seawater gradually scattered, revealing Princess Lushy's figure. She had returned to her human form, her face pale and her aura weak to the extreme. At this time, his eyes fell on Qin Yu. His lips moved, but he didn't say anything. Qin Yu frowned. He said in a low voice, "Your Highness, I have already allowed you to leave, so why haven't you undone the 1,000-thread, unending knot? If you were half a step late today, not only would you die, this Qin would also die." Princess Lushy's eyes widened. The guilt and gratefulness in her heart instantly vanished. She clenched her teeth in hatred. Sure enough, this surnamed Qin is a disgusting bastard. He only saved me because he didn't want to be implicated. She took a deep breath and coldly said, "I am injured. Protect me for several days. Don't worry, once I return I will explain everything clearly. The sea demon race will not make things difficult for you again and will even give you some compensation." Qin Yu thought for a moment and nodded. His complexion was still ugly. It had to be known that there was a limit to how long he could stay in the Netherworld Sea region. He still had many things he needed to do. So where did he have the time to waste? But leaving behind Princess Lushy clearly wasn't an option. This woman would definitely use the 1,000-thread, unending knot as an excuse. In addition to the potential threat of the sea demon race, Princess Lushy's teeth itched. If it weren't for you, would I have ended up in this situation? Bastard. But the princess had clearly forgotten that it was she who had been deceived by others and provoked Qin Yu first. Of course, this wasn't something the princess would think of. Even if she did, she would subconsciously ignore it. Qin Yu didn't bother with any nonsense. He grabbed Princess Lushy and rapidly flew away. Princess Lushy clenched her jaws. "Endure, endure, I will endure." After flying out 1,000 miles and dealing with several sea monsters along the way, Qin Yu dug out a cave dwelling on a reef at the seabed. Thankfully, the terrain of the Netherworld Sea region was complex. There were trenches that were hundreds of thousands of feet deep and immeasurably terrifying, and there were also towering mountains that were less than 100 meters from the sea. Otherwise, just the seawater alone would have crushed a person to death. So how could he have even thought of digging out a cave dwelling? Qin Yu tossed down some pills and returned to his room. "Love, gobe small, say net." Chu Princess Lushy hesitated again and again. In the end, she took the pill and carefully examined it. Then, she clenched her teeth and swallowed it. Soon, her eyes brightened and the worry on her face scattered. She quickly closed her eyes and began to heal. At this time, Qin Yu was holding the 100 nether sword, carefully sensing its changes. After this demonic treasure swallowed 6 golden core variant sea monsters. Besides the blade becoming a deeper color, there wasn't any other change to its surface. Qin Yu carefully probed it. Its aura was only slightly stronger than before, but after killing 3 variant sea monsters, he could feel just how powerful it was. He stroked the scabbard, feeling the rough bumps and bumps. He thought for a long time, a thoughtful expression on his face. It seemed that although the 100 nether sword had recognized him as its master, it hadn't truly opened up to him. But that didn't matter. Since it had already recognized him as its master, there would be plenty of time in the future. One day, he would find out just what sort of treasure the 100 nether sword was. He placed it in his storage ring and took out another object. It was the copper mirror he had just obtained. Including this object, all of the harvests from the ancient cultivator's cave dwelling had fallen into Qin Yu's hands. He hadn't painstakingly schemed against anyone, but the people who schemed against him had already died. It wasn't too big nor too small. It could be considered a taunt. Returning to the main topic, the copper mirror clearly rejected him. This was different from when a magic tool's master died, and its relationship with a magic tool was immediately dissolved. Qin Yu wasn't startled or angry. Instead, he smiled. This was because this meant that the copper mirror was no longer a dead magic tool. Rather, it had its own simple judgment of likes and dislikes. In other words, it had its own consciousness. Spirit treasure, Qin Yu carefully probed it. After a long time, he was overjoyed. This was because he discovered that this time he might have obtained a harvest that surpassed his expectations. The copper mirror was a spirit treasure. However, it seemed to have suffered heavy losses a long time ago, causing its consciousness to be damaged and the vast majority of its strength to be sealed away. What remained might only be a tenth of its peak strength, or even less. A tenth or even less of its strength was able to display the might he had seen before. If it were restored to its peak, then perhaps even a nascent soul would have to retreat. Qin Yu's smile widened. He tried to refine it, but he wasn't worried. This was a spirit treasure. So how could it be so easy to subdue? He would raise it first. Taking out several pills, Qin Yu sat down cross-legged to refine them. Cultivation was like rowing a boat against the current. If he didn't advance, he would fall behind. The reason he had his current strength was because of the little blue lamp. But no one could erase Qin Yu's own hard work. 5 days later, Princess Leshy walked out of her room. Qin Yu responded and directly said, "Can we go now?" Princess Leshy lifted her snow-white neck and coldly nodded. Qin Yu turned and walked away, his voice echoing out from afar. Unravel the thousand-thread, unending knot. Before his voice fell, he was already far away. Princess Leshy, finally, couldn't maintain the cold arrogance on her face. She stomped her feet in anger. What a good surname, Qin. You really think I'm a burden. You're afraid I'll implicate you. But I'm the one who's afraid you'll implicate me. She angrily slapped her forehead. A mass of blood-red light appeared in front of her, with countless threads tangled together. Perhaps this was what the 1,000 threads unbroken was like. With a ruthless slap, the blood-red light shattered. Princess Leshy let out a sigh of relief. She stamped her feet and rushed out of the cave dwelling. In the distance, Qin Yu could feel an invisible connection within his body sever. He knew that the 1,000 threads unbroken had been undone, and he relaxed a little. He really didn't want to be entangled with the sea monster races any longer. If everyone went their own way and didn't interfere with each other, then that would be for the best. Now that the troubles were over, it was time to get to work. Whoosh! Qin Yu rapidly flew away. An hour later, the 9 nether winding path. Repeating the same method from before, he summoned the thunder magic sword and thrust it into the sea. Hum! Purple lightning spread out. The crab monster was in the limelight. In particular, several sea monsters that were usually flirting with each other had brought it autumn spinach, making it feel even more comfortable inside and out. After the glory passed, it lazily lay down in its cave, sleeping. It didn't know what it was dreaming about, but it was so beautiful that it kept running up its nose. Purple lightning swept over. The crab monster quivered and was immediately enraged. Don't you know the prestige of this old crab? Where did this fool come from? Do you want to die? Sensing it, holy shit, it was actually that human cultivator from a few days ago. Good brat, when you saw this old crab's glory, you turned tail and ran away in fear. And now you still dare to come back? Hee hee. This old crab won't give you a chance to run away. Brat, just wait for your death. Magic power surged around Qin Yu's body. He flew in the air, the 100 nether sword hanging at his side. As if it could feel the summons of a delicious meal, it was excited. Suddenly, seawater violently erupted, condensing into a giant column of water that came crashing down. The crab monster was hidden within. As the column of water rushed up, its two pincers slashed out. "Prepare to die!" Bang! The column of water shattered. The crab monster was startled. It thought that this brat had some skills. In the next moment, a boundless strength swept out. With a light cracking sound, the crab monster's pincers began to crack. It opened its mouth, but before it could even scream in pain, a black light held out, drilling into its mouth. The crab monster's massive body froze in place. With a loud bang, the 100 nether sword flew out. Qin Yu's lips twitched. He could clearly see that before the crab monster's eyes dimmed, there was a deep bitterness in them. It was clear that the crab monster found it hard to accept how it died. Bang! The crab monster smashed into the sea, stirring up massive waves. The sea monsters in the 9 nether winding path were stunned, unable to wrap their heads around what had just happened. What was the old crab doing? Why had it been defeated so quickly? Because of the column of water, they weren't able to see what had happened. But it was clear that the brat outside wasn't as simple as they imagined. He was absolutely a ruthless character. The sea monsters revealed looks of dread. Their eyes swiveled around, but none of them made a sound. The golden core variant sea monsters had already regained some of their sanity. Although their desire to kill was intense, none of them were willing to seek death. Suddenly, from deep within the 9 nether winding path, a divine sense fluctuation spread out. The eyes of the hesitant sea monsters brightened. Whoosh! The shark monster rushed out. It bit down on the crab monster's corpse, tearing it apart and swallowing it whole. Blood gushed out in all directions. Countless sea monsters gulped, but they were a step too late. They could only cry out in pity in their hearts. In the blink of an eye, the crab monster's corpse was cleanly eaten up. The monster energy around the shark monster had clearly become much more tyrannical. Without delay, it flicked its tail and held out. Whoosh! The shark monster's 70 to 80-foot long body was exposed to the air. It opened its mouth and spat out a mouthful of black water. Chapter 113. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go? Speak Net, to provide you with wonderful novels to read. This black water was the poison that the shark monster had accumulated in its body after eating countless sea monsters for many years. It was a life-saving trump card, but it didn't feel any pain spitting it out. If it killed this cultivator and then ate him, perhaps its strength would rise to another level. What did losing a little venom count for? Many eager sea monsters curled their lips as they saw this. They cursed the old shark in their hearts for using such a powerful move. What did they have to do with it? What a pity for this boy. Otherwise, if he ate him, the taste would be amazing. As the sea monsters gulped, Qin Yu allowed the venom to fall onto his body. From start to finish, he didn't move at all. Countless sea monsters were left dumbfounded. Brat, where did the nimbleness of killing that old crab just now go? Although we all know that you will definitely die under the old shark's hands, this is far too simple. The sea monsters that were a step too late and didn't have the chance to attack felt their intestines turn green with regret. Who would have thought that things would be so simple? The shark monster was startled for a moment before reacting. It was fully confident in its venom, let alone a human cultivator. Even a sea monster with the strongest poison resistance would die without a doubt. It had to hurry. Otherwise, if the venom corroded away, there wouldn't even be a scrap of flesh left. What a pity! The shark monster rushed forwards, opening its mouth to swallow the corpse. It certainly had its own methods of dealing with its venom so that it wouldn't cause any harm to itself. Bang! A fist drilled out and heavily smashed into the shark monster's mouth, sending it spinning away. Its mouth was completely torn open, and it let out a blood-curdling woo-woo wail without being able to make a sound. Whoosh! The 100 nether sword seized this chance to attack, easily drawing out another drop of blood. It could be called the best killer. Hum! An invisible strength gushed out from the void, wrapping around the shark monster's corpse and pulling it to his side. Qin Yu waved his hand, and the shark monster's corpse vanished, placed in his storage ring. He had no use for the corpse, but the shark monster's teeth were indeed treasures. In the past, the strange fish had used 108 teeth to refine the storm flow magic tool that had forced back the 7 slaughtered demon sect master, Heaven Star Demon. There was simply no one else that could match its might. It wasn't easy for him to run into another qualified one, so he certainly couldn't miss out on it. As for why the shark monster's venom had no effect on him, he could only blame his bad luck. Although the Netherworld sea region didn't distinguish between day and night, the little blue lamp was able to accurately sense the rotation of day and night. So now was the time for the Foot of Sea Blue Light. And under the protection of the Foot of Sea Blue Light, Qin Yu possessed the world's most potent poison immunity. When he was wrapped in black venom, all he needed to do was take out the little blue lamp, and all of the poison would be extracted and condensed into his right index finger. The shark demon was dead. Love, go small. Say, Neck Cadet again. How did he die? The sea demons were dumbfounded. When Old Crab died, he didn't see it clearly, but this time it was right in front of his eyes. The poison had already wrapped around this human cultivator, but he was still fine. Did the old shark's venom expire and deteriorate? All right, this joke was indeed too cold. But who could tell them what the F***CK was going on? Big Fish, Second Fish, Old Crab, and Old Shark, for sea demons of the 9 underworlds, had fallen at the hands of this human cultivator. This wasn't anything at all. If they were able to cultivate to the golden core level, which one of them hadn't eaten a cultivator or two. But the key point was that this matter was far too mysterious. Besides that black sword who had added the final blow, the other 4 had died in an inexplicable manner. The sea demons weren't stupid. Panic began to appear in their eyes. This cultivator was too strange. A deep roar echoed out from deep within the 9 underworlds' winding path. It was cold and cruel, and the sea demons all revealed looks of fear. Whoosh, whoosh, 6 variant sea monsters broke through the water. Without a single word, they used all sorts of supernatural abilities. Water columns, venom, strong winds, and so on were all normal. But what the hell was this spitting fire? Come on. You are sea monsters. You are sea monsters. Bang! The blood escape art erupted. Qin Yu dodged the attacks and approached the fire-spitting sea monster, sending it to its death with a single punch. Abnormalities were often strange, and strange things weren't easy to deal with. It was best to eliminate them first. This told them that there were no advantages to being strange or flashy. Being honest and low-key was the way of the king. Qin Yu superimposed his strength with the blood escape art as well as the 100 nether sword that could deal additional damage to the variant sea monsters. Although these 6 sea monsters were tyrannical, their fate had already been decided. Sea monsters fell into the sea one after another. Another variant sea monster that met the requirements of storm flow was placed into Qin Yu's storage ring. A great harvest. Hum! Hum! The 100 nether sword cried out in excitement, nearly fainting. As if sensing its urgency, another group of sea monsters drilled out from the 9 underworlds' winding path. This time there were 10. Qin Yu revealed a dignified expression, but he still chose to take the initiative. He rushed out with the blood escape art. His demon body overbearingly swept out, and the 100 nether sword flew up and down, slaughtering everything in its path. Deep within the 9 underworlds' winding path, in the nearly black seawater, a giant head appeared. Its single eye shined with a sharp light, as if it could pierce through the seawater and cover Qin Yu and the 100 nether sword. Its eyes were cloudy and uncertain, filled with hesitation. Bang! The last sea monster was cut down. The 100 nether sword tore through its flesh and blood and flew out. The sword body surged with black light, swaying back and forth as if it were drunk. Qin Yu flicked his sleeves and took it back. Then he turned and left without hesitation. Using the blood escape art with all his might, he turned into a small dot on the horizon and vanished from sight. Deep within the 9 underworlds' winding path, the giant head paused for a moment before emitting a deep roar of annoyance. But faintly it seemed to relax a bit. After flying far away, Qin Yu came to a stop. He looked back at the 9 underworlds' winding path, his complexion dark and obscure. When he was cutting down the sea monsters just now, he had felt an extremely terrifying threat beneath that part of the sea. Qin Yu didn't know what it was, but since the 100 nether sword had swallowed enough sea monsters, he might as well leave to avoid any complications. Since the other party didn't chase after him, it should be because it didn't want to come into conflict with him. This result wasn't too bad. Whoosh! Qin Yu rapidly flew far away. In the netherworld sea region, there was a mass of clouds. It was unknown why it had condensed, but it was a bone-chilling cold that didn't disperse all year round. It covered a massive area of the sea. Inside, yin and yang were reversed, the 5 elements reversed, and ghosts filled the air like the yellow springs of hell. The dangers here were even higher than in the sea. Every time the netherworld sea region opened, there would be cultivators that entered and then stayed there forever. The scope of this fog was called the netherworld realm. It was rumored that the reason the netherworld sea existed was because of the netherworld realm. Everything that the demonic path had done in secret was here. Shwa! The light converged, revealing Qin Yu's figure. As he hurried along, he had consumed pills to restore himself. The 100 nether sword had fallen into a deep slumber, but this was clearly a good thing. Once it awoke, its strength would rise by leaps and bounds. Qin Yu looked up. In front of him was a mass of black clouds that seemed to condense in the darkness of the night. As if it had been frozen, it slowly surged about. This was the netherworld realm. Standing outside the black clouds, the temperature in the air had fallen by a great deal. His breath instantly condensed into countless tiny icicles. However, the surrounding sea surface wasn't affected by the cold at all. Waves still tumbled about, but the flow was a bit slower, as if it had become much thicker. Looking around and not sensing anything wrong, Qin Yu's figure flickered and he flew into the netherworld realm. For a land covered in black clouds to be called the netherworld realm, it naturally had its differences. As he flew into the clouds, it was like he had entered a completely different world. As he probed with his divine sense, it was hard to distinguish between left and right, front and back. The seawater beneath his feet had turned a light red color. It was like diluted blood. Standing within was like standing in a sea of blood. Woo-woo! Wind blew against his face, the icy cold biting into his bones. This was the sound of the wind, but it was also the cries of departed souls. The sharp syllables were like countless needles, attacking the soul from every opening. If one soul was slightly weaker, they would suffer endless pain under this attack. They might even lose their will and be controlled by the departed souls. Qin Yu frowned for a moment before composing himself. He swept his eyes around and was just about to leave when he suddenly stopped. 2 shadows leapt up from underground, hurtling towards him. Before they approached, an cold aura rushed towards him, leaving his heart cold. Departed souls. From the outline of the 2 shadows, they were undoubtedly humanoid. Qin Yu didn't have time to consider why the departed souls in the netherworld sea region would be humanoid. He flicked his sleeves and summoned the thunder magic sword. Peepa, peepa, purple lightning spread out. The 2 departed souls smashed into the thunder. With a loud scream, they turned into smoke. The power of thunder was of the highest yang attribute. It was the natural nemesis of all yin and cold evil beings. Since Qin Yu dared to step into the netherworld realm, he was naturally prepared. As if sensing the aura of the thunder magic sword, Qin Yu hurried along the way. None of the departed souls dared to attack him again. Even so, he could still occasionally feel the cold aura of the departed souls. It was clear that, although they were in awe, they hadn't given up. Qin Yu hurried along, carefully searching for traces of the demonic path. Although he seemed calm, he was actually on high alert. The Netherworld realm was infamous. He didn't believe that he could scare them away with just the Netherworld magic sword. 2 hours later, Qin Yu suddenly stopped. His icy cold eyes swept around. The Netherworld realm was extremely dark, but he could clearly see the faint fluctuations of the seawater in the distance. In addition to the faint traces of infernal energy, humph! To take the initiative, Qin Yu grabbed the thunder magic sword and thrust it into the sea. Magic power poured in, and purple lightning erupted. The surrounding 1,000 feet of sea region instantly turned into a sea of thunder. Roar, roar. With pained roars, sea monsters broke through the water. Their rotten bodies were covered in wounds, even revealing pitch-black bones. Sea corpse monsters. There were no living beings in the Netherworld realm. Sea monsters that entered by mistake would have their bodies taken over by the departed souls after they died, turning into these incomparably strong monsters that didn't fear death. They were departed soul puppets and were also servants of high-level departed souls. If so many sea corpse monsters appeared here, then there must be high-level departed souls here. Qin Yu had a dignified expression. He pulled out the thunder magic sword and slashed down. The lightning turned into a saber that cut down on the nearest sea corpse monster. Its massive rotten body was soaked in corpse energy and was as hard as iron. But at this time it was easily cut in half like butter. The thunder saber didn't stop. It continued to cut down, cutting apart the corpses of 5 sea monsters before vanishing in the air. Magic power surged, his black robes fluttering in the wind. With the thunder magic sword in hand, Qin Yu was like a thunder god descending to the world, slaughtering to his heart's content. Besides their own stench, the terrifying sea corpse monsters couldn't even touch a corner of his clothes. Every sea corpse monster needed several years to slowly form. To a high-level departed soul, they were their most important wealth. Not only could they use them to fight enemies, but they could also protect themselves from being swallowed by others of their kind. This speed of loss clearly surpassed the expectations of the high-level departed soul. An angry roar sounded out. Chapter 114. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go? This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. Qin Yu stiffened. A large black hand appeared out of thin air and ruthlessly grasped at him. Bang! Purple lightning erupted. Qin Yu staggered away, barely managing to avoid the attack. He looked up with a pale face and then turned to flee. Shwa! A black figure appeared on the sea surface. It was over 10 feet tall and seemed solid. There was no other color in its black eyes. They were like 2 bottomless black holes, capable of swallowing a person's soul. It stared at Qin Yu as if it were locking onto a delicious prey. Its scarlet tongue licked its lips, and it opened its mouth to silently howl. A terrifying sound wave wildly vibrated at a high frequency. It was like countless spinning knives, tearing apart everything. Qin Yu cried out miserably as he fell into the sea. The sea corpse monsters swarmed over and fished him out of the sea. Although they were drooling over him, they didn't dare to move at all. Looking at the delicious flesh and blood in front of it and smelling the alluring scent, the high-level specter's eyes revealed naked greed. It couldn't wait any longer. It wanted to suck out his brain and swallow his soul. Then, this powerful mortal body that was filled with strength would become its own. It opened its great mouth, and a scarlet tongue drilled out like lightning. Shwa! Qin Yu's eyes flashed open, cold and sharp. In the next moment, the sky thunder bamboo arrived. Blinding purple lightning rose up from the sea, burning everything to ashes. The sea corpse monsters cried out miserably. The specter hiding within them turned into nothingness. The high-level specter wanted to flee, but after taking several steps, its body became smaller and smaller. After several breaths of time, the lightning converged. Qin Yu reached out a hand, and a translucent bead fell into his palm. There seemed to be tumbling clouds within it. Probing it, He could see an astonishing amount of pure soul strength contained within. Qin Yu had a strange expression. He never thought that after the high-level specter was purified by thunder, it would produce something like this. This bead could be directly refined and absorbed to enhance one's soul strength. It wasn't an exaggeration to call it a rare treasure. Should he take advantage of this chance to collect a few more? Once he left this place, he could refine them all, and the intensity of his soul would surely rise. But while dreams were plentiful, reality was far too cruel. Qin Yu had underestimated the sensitivity of the high-level specter towards danger in the netherworld realm. When he killed a high-level specter, he would be stained with its aura. Often, before Qin Yu could approach, the high-level specter would avoid him. Qin Yu thought about it for a moment and figured out what was going on. He was a bit disappointed. However, in this way, the incomparably dangerous nether realm had become a smooth road for him, and it could be considered an unexpected gain. Suppressing these thoughts, he focused all his attention on searching for traces of the demonic path cultivators. The truth was that at this time, Qin Yu was well aware that the netherworld realm was a separate space, and its interior was far larger than it appeared from the outside. In addition to the disorder of yin and yang and the 5 elements, it was very likely that after walking for a long time, one would end up walking in circles. 1 day, 2 days, Qin Yu revealed a happy expression. He lifted his palm and a talisman appeared, sparkling with light. When Han Sha and I was running for his life, in his panic, he didn't notice that a talisman mark had fallen onto his body. Unfortunately, Qin Yu's control over talismans wasn't strong enough. In addition, the distance was far, so it was difficult for him to accurately lock onto the location. But at this moment, the sensory talisman in his hand lit up, indicating that the other party was nearby. Qin Yu carefully probed. According to the brightness of the sensing talismans, he soon found the correct direction. The Tao of talismans was truly marvelous beyond words. Shua, Qin Yu raced forwards. In the depths of the netherworld realm, there was a small island. It wasn't even a mile wide and was dark red all over, as if countless drops of blood had gathered and solidified. Slaughter energy lingered about it, shocking one's soul. This island was quite famous. It was called Blood Red Island, and it wandered through the netherworld realm. Today, on this island, black demonic energy tumbled endlessly. The runes of the array formation on the ground surged with a dark red light. From time to time, specters would fly onto the island, rushing in like moths to a flame. At the core of this array formation, a giant furnace stood tall. Blood-red veins appeared on its surface, like the meridians of a human. They greedily wriggled about, sucking in all the specters that rushed in. The specters woke up at the last moment. They could feel the terrifying aura coming from the furnace. They struggled and screamed, but they couldn't change their final fate. The sea around the island froze, forming a thin layer of black ice. As long as someone stepped onto it, they would suffer a deadly poison attack. This was the furnace's strength spreading out. At the critical moment of its awakening, it instinctively protected itself. Every sea monster's aura withered as they were imprisoned. Their faces were deathly pale and fear surged in their eyes. It was as if they had suffered a great fright. Outside the furnace array formation, 2 groups of cultivators were clearly separated. From time to time, their gazes met, cold and angry. But looking at their auras, they were undoubtedly demonic path cultivators. Han Sha and I was among them, speaking in a low voice. In front of him was an arrogant, demonic cultivator. He was ridiculously young, but his aura was tyrannical. He didn't speak, only frowning from time to time. A cold chill surged in the air, as if invisible blades were cutting at them. The demonic cultivators on the other side were clearly at a disadvantage. Whether it was morale, numbers, or strength, they were all suppressed. On the surface, the strongest was a 7th-level golden core cultivator, but his face was deathly pale. It was clear he had suffered heavy wounds. Beside him, a tall and sturdy figure was sitting cross-legged, revealing his broad and powerful back. It was impossible to see his face. One could only judge from his clothes and his steady and powerful heartbeat that he was a young man. The other demonic cultivators closely guarded the two of them. From time to time, they would look up with nervous expressions. It seemed that these two demonic cultivators didn't get along well with each other. The arrogant demonic cultivator looked up, his eyes sharp and bright, like an eagle looking down on the earth. Shan Wugu, Northgate Demon, is in critical condition because he tried to save you. Shouldn't you be looking for something to treat him? Northgate Demon hurriedly said, My injuries are fine. There is no need for Saint Sun Deep Blue to worry about me. He said in a low voice, anxiously, Saint Sun, don't fall for their trap. Shan Wugu lifted a hand, his voice calm and steady. Northgate, even if there is only a slight chance, I will still do everything in my power to save you. He raised his voice and said, Deep Blue, do you have any advice for me? Deep Blue said without expression, Leave this island and head 100 miles north. There is something that can save Northgate Demon. Who? Shan Wugu stood up. Wind stirred up, revealing half his face, shrouded in shadows. Northgate Demon shouted out, Saint Sun, please reconsider. Shan Wugu smiled. Don't worry, I will return soon. Shua, demonic light flashed. He rapidly flew far away, leaving the island in the blink of an eye. The demonic cultivators under his command all had red eyes, their faces full of admiration and gratitude. As they looked at the demonic cultivators across from them, there was even more hate in their eyes. Deep Blue's expression didn't change. A faint mocking light flashed in his eyes. Shan Wugu was indeed Shan Wugu. He was still skilled at winning over the hearts of others. But in this world, only the living could obtain the gratitude of others. As long as you die, these people will join me without hesitation. No one will shed a single tear for you. Deep Blue slowly said, Men add fuel. Two demonic cultivators grabbed a sea monster. Ignoring its cries of fear, they tossed it into the range of the array formation. The sea monster's body melted like wax. It melted into meat paste that was injected into the array formation and absorbed by the furnace. The entire process only lasted for several breaths of time. But to the sea monsters, this was the cruelest torture in the world. They shivered, their eyes filled with hatred and resentment. Deep Blue was expressionless. The hatred of the weak was meaningless to him. Moreover, the more they acted this way, the better the effects would be. This time, the Saint Lord hadn't hesitated to consume his cultivation to open up a channel and send them into the Netherworld Sea. This was to borrow the strength of the dead souls here and use the sea folk as a sacrifice to awaken the slumbering Saint Furnace. Up until now, things had proceeded smoothly. In another 10 days, the Saint Furnace should awaken. At that time, that would be a great merit. Deep Blue suddenly frowned. He thought of something that dampened his mood. Han Shan was extremely useless and had actually killed several of his subordinates. Humph! Since he couldn't free himself, he might as well let this person go for now. The most urgent matter right now was to eliminate Shan Wugu. In the demonic path, a single Saint Sun was enough. Black clouds floated above his head, and he stepped on a sea of blood. As Qin Yu walked forwards, his expression was grim, and the jade slip in his hand shined with light. He wasn't too far away. Suddenly, Qin Yu's pupil shrank. He looked down at his feet. At some unknown time, a thin layer of ice had appeared on the sea of blood. It was as black as ink. Faint traces of icy coldness rose up from the black ice like needles, drilling into his body. This icy coldness contained an extremely terrifying destructive strength. It caused his blood to rapidly solidify and spread at an astonishing speed. Poison! Qin Yu frowned for a moment before composing himself. If it were any other cultivator, they would be distressed by this black ice poison. They might even lose their life because of it. But to Qin Yu, starting from a certain day, All poisons in this world had become meaningless to him. With a turn of his hand, a foot of blue light bloomed. The poison that drilled into his body was expelled by an invisible strength. It gathered in his limbs and bones, condensing into a black line that flowed into his right index finger. His fingertip became increasingly warm and smooth, as if it were made of jade. It shimmered with a faint halo of light. Qin Yu looked up. As he looked at the black clouds and the specters that were constantly flying in, his eyes brightened. Without a doubt, the five-element spiritual objects that he had been searching for were right in front of him. But the more this was the case, the more he had to be careful. The demonic path must have made a massive amount of preparations for this secret mission. If he went any further, he would enter a tiger's den. Although Qin Yu was confident in his own strength, that didn't mean he would act recklessly. If he could achieve his goal with the least amount of effort, that would be for the best. How should he attack? His thoughts raced. Qin Yu's complexion changed. He took several steps to the side, avoiding the attack of demonic energy. He lifted his hand and punched out. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, two fists collided. A terrifying strength collided. Finger bones groaned, and a shaking strength swept out. Qin Yu coughed and drew back. The attacker didn't think his reaction would be so sharp. He let out a surprised gasp, and a cautious look appeared in his eyes. The black ice on the sea surface was attacked by the two people's killing intent. Large tracts of ice splashed out in all directions. Shwa! Qin Yu deflected the shaking strength and stopped. His body was bent like a taut bow, ready to erupt with a fatal attack in the next moment. He looked up, his icy cold eyes looking at the other side, but at this time he frowned. His eyes widened and his body stiffened. In a battle between masters, a single moment of weakness could change the outcome. This should have been the best chance to attack, but the other side also seemed shocked. The two of them looked at each other. It was only when the sound of breaking air reached them that they regained their composure. There was no time to speak. They could only glance at each other and suppress their tumbling thoughts. Shan Wugu turned and shouted, "There is no need to worry. This is a good friend of mine from long ago." Deep Blue's complexion darkened. He swept his eyes over Qin Yu and coldly said, "Shan Wugu, you and I have always acted in secret. So how did your friend find this place? You must give me an explanation for this." Shan Wugu lightly said, "Meeting here is naturally a coincidence. What explanation does Saint Sun, Deep Blue, want?" Chapter 115. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go. This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. Deep Blue coldly sneered. Coincidence? Shan Wugu, do you think I will believe such an explanation? He roared out, "Shan Wugu, how dare you? This matter is the order of the Saint Lord and involves a great secret of the demonic path. Yet you dare to privately leak it out. If a mistake occurs because of this, then even 10,000 deaths cannot atone for your crimes." His eyes fell on Qin Yu, thick light swirling around him. What a good Shan Wugu! He had really underestimated his methods. He actually had the guts to play tricks on the St. Furnace and seek outside help. Only a single person had come. Soldiers valued quality over quantity, so they were naturally used to deal with him. Thinking of this, Deep Blue's killing intent soared. Northgate Demon and the others were anxious. The Saint Sun had always acted in a safe and dependable manner. So how could he have made such a mistake and been caught red-handed by Saint Sun Deep Blue? This was bad. Shan Wugu was expressionless. There is no need for Saint Sun Deep Blue to worry. Since he is my friend, I will vouch for him. After rushing out of the island and arriving here, Han Shanai saw the face across from him. His complexion paled and his pupils subconsciously shrank in fear. His first thought was, why was he here? Those that could cultivate to the Golden Core realm naturally weren't idiots. His thoughts raced as he thought. This person had followed him here. Han Shanai felt a bitter taste in his mouth. He absolutely could not let Saint's son, Deep Blue, know of this matter. Otherwise he would surely suffer a miserable fate. As he heard Shan Wugu vouch for him, his eyes brightened. He took a deep breath and pointed a finger at Qin. He angrily screamed, "Saint's son, this subordinate recognizes this person. He is the one who rescued the sea monster royal princess and killed 5 powerhouses of my demonic path." Deep Blue's eyes flashed. "Elder Han, are you speaking the truth?" Han Shanai roared out, "This subordinate dares to guarantee it with his life." Saint's son Deep Blue's eyes were like sabers. "Shan Wugu, how do you explain this?" Shan Wugu frowned. He had heard that Han Shanya's group had encountered powerful enemies and suffered disastrous casualties, but he never imagined that this was Qin Yu's doing. If so, things had become troublesome. Deep Blue lifted his hand. Demonic energy tumbled in his palm, condensing into a demon face that roared at Qin Yu. His lips curved up. "Shan Wugu, I already suspected you to be a spy of the righteous path, but I never had any evidence. Now I finally had a handle on him. This person is your friend. Can you explain where his righteous aura comes from?" Shan Wugu fell silent. Deep Blue stepped forward, roiling demonic chi erupting from his body. His cold gaze swept over them. "You people, do you still want to listen to the name of the righteous path spy?" Han Shanai sneered and waved his hand. The demonic cultivators behind him spread out, forming an encirclement. "Love, go, small, say." Netkahi was filled with excitement. If he could use this chance to eliminate Shan Wugu, then that would be a great merit to him. Northgate Demon and the others were enraged. Although they didn't believe this, they didn't know how to refute the current situation. Saint Sun Deep Blue's ability to discern demons was quite famous within the demonic path. Qin Yu's aura of righteousness couldn't be faked. Moreover, he had killed 5 devil cultivators. Under the bloody evidence, any form of rebuttal seemed powerless. Shan Wugu had already tacitly agreed. The hearts of his subordinates wavered. This was the perfect time to strike. Deep Blue's eyes flashed with killing intent. If he could eliminate Shan Wugu today, then even if he returned to the Total Faction headquarters, he wouldn't fear any investigation. Suddenly, a cold sneer echoed in the air. Compared to Deep Blue's wild and untamed demeanor, it was more of a cruel and ruthless killing intent. The surrounding space fell silent. Qin Yu's eyes were cold. "Open your eyes wide and take a good look at just who I am." He took a step forwards. Bang! A wild aura broke out from his body. Infernal energy tumbled and the smell of blood filled the air. The demon body revolved, causing his blood vitality to seethe. At this time he was like a demon king that had emerged from hell. There wasn't even the slightest bit of the righteous aura from before. After being impacted by this infernal energy, the surrounding demonic cultivators cried out in alarm and drew backwards, fear in their eyes. This infernal energy was condensed from Qin Yu's endless slaughter. In addition, most of those that died under his hands were golden core level powerhouses. The strength of this infernal energy wasn't something that ordinary cultivators could resist. Northgate Demon and the others were filled with awe. Such a terrifying infernal energy. It was unknown just how many lives had been slaughtered in order to achieve this. A righteous path cultivator? Righteous path, your grandma's legs. This was absolutely a hero of my demonic path. Shan Wugu looked deeply at him. He lightly said, "Saint Sun Deep Blue, is there something else?" Deep Blue's complexion was ugly. He coldly looked at him. Han Shanya's heart shook. He hurriedly said, "Saint Sun, I swear that I am not lying. This surnamed Qin really did kill 5 of our masters." Qin Yu was expressionless. "That's right, I killed them." He suddenly roared out loud, gnashing his teeth. "You idiots, if it weren't for me interfering, that sea monster royal daughter would have already committed suicide. Do you really think you can suppress her and use her as a sacrifice The Saint Lord ordered you to come here because he wants you to be careful. Once you force the sea monster royal daughter to die, the sea monster race will surely be enraged. At that time, even the Netherworld Sea region will not be able to withstand the anger of the sea monster race. If because of this, the Saint Lord's orders will be affected, it doesn't matter if you want to seek death. But it is impossible for you to drag us along with you. Han Shanai was shocked and angry. Suppressed by Qin Yu's aura, he didn't know what to say. Deep Blue cursed him inwardly for being trash. He coldly said, I don't care who you are, but it is a fact that you killed my demonic path cultivators. Shan Wugu, this person is your friend, so you should bear all responsibility. I believe that before we investigate this matter, it is not suitable for you to continue guarding the Saint Furnace. Shan Wugu's complexion darkened. Northgate Demon and the others were even more enraged. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He casually lifted his hand and twirled his fingers. Shan Wugu's eyes were cloudy and uncertain. After a long time, he took a deep breath and said, I will take out evidence as soon as possible to prove fellow Taoist Qin's innocence. Let's go. Qin Yu's eyes lit up with a smile. Northgate Demon and the others were unwilling. They clenched their teeth and followed. Whoosh, whoosh. The group quickly left. Han Shanai had an anxious expression. Saint Sun, how can we let this person go so easily? Deep Blue shouted out, Shut up! You recklessly attacked the sea monster royal daughter. Luckily you were interrupted. Otherwise both you and I would have been in deep trouble. He looked in the direction that Shan Wugu and the others left in, a dignified expression on his face. That cultivator surnamed Qin wasn't someone to be trifled with. If they really did tear apart all pretense of cordiality, they might not be able to take advantage of him. As long as he could expel Shan Wugu and unseal the Saint Furnace, all the credit would be his. That was enough. However, just in case, he had to make preparations to avoid any accidents. Men continued to add fuel. Within 10 days, we must unseal the Saint Furnace. For a time, the panicked screams of the sea monsters on the blood-red island echoed through the skies. After leaving the island, Shan Wugu flew for some time. Then he stopped and flicked his sleeves, shooting out a beam of black light. The black light rapidly expanded, turning into a large ship. It was black all over, and its surface was no different from wood. But if one looked carefully, they would discover that this ship wasn't real, but was condensed from demonic energy. Shan Wugu led the group to land on the deck. He lightly said, Northgate, let's rest here for now. Northgate Demon hesitated. Shan Wugu smiled. Don't worry. Things will soon take a turn for the better. He looked at Qin Yu and cupped his hands together. Fellow Taoist Qin, please. Pushing open the cabin, Shan Wugu flicked his sleeves. The ship's spells activated, isolating them from the outside world. The two glanced at each other and then hugged each other, slapping each other on the back. But in the next moment, they simultaneously pushed each other away, their faces full of disgust. Get the hell away from me, you damned freak. Don't ruin my reputation. The two of them laughed. After laughing for a long time, their stomachs ached and their eyes reddened. Qin Yu took a deep breath. He clenched his teeth and roared, Potato, you bastard! You're actually still alive. I was sad for nothing. How do you plan on settling this matter? As Shan Wugu heard this, he revealed a look of reminiscence. After a moment of silence, he gently sighed. In truth, I never thought I would actually survive. Shan Wugu was the Lang Tu who had been harmed by Su Jian and thrown into the 100,000-foot abyss. The mysteries of the world were truly hard to predict. The brothers that had been separated in the past were reunited today. Qin Yu knew that Lang Tu must have experienced many things. He patted Lang Tu's shoulder and softly said, How about we brothers have a chat? All right. There was a round table and 2 chairs. Qin Yu and Lang Tu sat across from each other. There was wine in front of them, but no food. I was poisoned by Su Jian and knocked down a cliff. I thought I would die, but I never imagined that there would be a surging river below. Haha, the river was too cold and it flowed too fast. I fell into the river and broke many of my bones, but I managed to preserve my little life. Perhaps it was because I drank too much of the river water, but I vomited and vomited, so the poison in my body eased a little and I didn't die in the icy cold water. When I woke up, it was a demonic path cultivator who saved me. As Lang Tu spoke to hear, his face twitched. His voice darkened, and he drank a mouthful of wine. Of course, he didn't save me out of kindness. It was just that he was missing a suitable medicine man. Lang Tu paused for several breaths of time and then grinned. In short, there were many things that happened, but I don't want to experience them again. You know that I survived, and I lived a very good life. My cultivation rose by leaps and bounds. After that, I coincidentally joined the demonic path. You know that my talent isn't good, so I had no choice but to walk the stupid path of body transformation. But I never thought that the demonic path would have a cultivation method that was especially suitable for me. It was because of this that I was chosen by the demonic path Holy Lord and became the so-called demonic path Saint Sun. But, as you can see, my title of Saint Sun is quite exaggerated. If I'm not mistaken, I'm basically just a role to accompany the Crown Prince in his studies. There were many things that Lang Tu didn't want to remember, and there were also some things that he didn't want to say. Qin Yu could understand this, but he always felt that there was a barrier between the two of them. It was impossible for them to return to the way they were in the past. Perhaps this was the power of time. But as he thought of the little blue lamp, some of his emotions faded away. He laughed at himself. Didn't he also have some secrets that he couldn't speak of? People changed. Potato, that is all in the past. Being able to live is already a stroke of good fortune. Lang Tu nodded and laughed. I have no complaints. Compared to death, everything I experienced isn't anything at all. His eyes brightened. What about you, Taro? Just how much time has passed, and you've reached your current cultivation? If you say that you didn't have any lucky chances, I don't believe you. Qin Yu smiled. He recounted the events of these past years. Although he carefully embellished his story, he couldn't help but cover up some traces. Lang Tu laughed. I was originally feeling a bit guilty for deceiving my best friend in the world, but now I feel much better. He waved his hand and said, No need to explain, no need to explain. It's fine as long as we understand each other. Qin Yu bitterly smiled and nodded. Chapter 116. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go. Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. The two of them fell silent at the same time. Perhaps they both felt some changes in each other. Love, go small, say Neku after a long time. Lang Tu smiled and broke the silence. He said in a relaxed tone, Taro, in order to avoid trouble, don't call me Lang Tu anymore. My current name is Shan Wugu. On his simple and honest face, there was a faint indifference. Lang Tu, after that day he died. Shan Wugu, Shan Wugu. Did he fall off the cliff and not even his bones remained? With such a name, one could imagine the resentment in his heart. Qin Yu calmly nodded. Good. However, I've already killed and poisoned Su Jian and the others. Shan Wugu punched him. So it was you. The demonic path had wantonly invaded the southern empire, and the eastern mountain sect had been razed to the ground. He had secretly investigated and found out that Su Jian had died an inexplicable death, but he didn't know that Qin Yu had taken revenge for him. Shan Wugu smiled, feeling a bit moved in his heart. He chatted with Qin Yu for a bit longer before getting down to business. Qin Yu, why are you reminding me to withdraw? Just what is your plan? Qin Yu smiled. Luckily you're smart enough to see through my warning. I really don't want you to protect the Saint Furnace anymore, because the reason I rushed to the sea region was because of it. His eyes were earnest. Potato, I'll only call you by your nickname. That should be fine. Let me ask you, what is your mission for entering the sea region? Shan Wugu hesitated for a moment. He said, Unseal the Saint Furnace. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. Do we need to use 5-element spiritual objects here? Shan Wugu's eyebrows arched up, as if he were extremely surprised. Qin Yu clapped his hands. That's great. Potato and the 5 elemental spiritual objects are my targets. Shan Wugu frowned. He was obviously in a difficult position. Qin Yu waved his hand. Listen to me. He pondered for a moment, and after confirming that there weren't too many flaws in the plan he came up with in a hurry, he began to explain in a low voice. Shan Wugu's eyes slowly brightened. Finally, after some hesitation, he nodded and said, All right, I believe you. Then let's make a bet. Qin Yu hesitated. Potato! My only worry is that this matter will implicate you. Shan Wugu's heart warmed. Don't worry. Something happened to the Saint Furnace, and it is inevitable that it will be punished. But I've already escaped, and in addition to the repairs I made afterwards, it shouldn't be fatal. Moreover, compared to the expected benefits, these risks were nothing. If I'm lucky, my role as the Crown Prince's study companion might be able to reach a higher level. As he spoke, he winked. Moreover, I feel that your gains this time might far exceed your expectations. Love, Gobe Small, say, Netku. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. Are you saying? Shan Wugu blinked his eyes. Guess. Seeing Qin Yu's annoyed expression, he laughed out loud. Qin Yu! Oh, Qin Yu, your luck is truly good. The Saint Lord spent countless methods to gather the power of the 5 elements, but now it seems that there is a high chance that it will belong to you. Qin Yu was overjoyed. The 5-element spiritual objects were actually complete. 5-element spiritual objects. This wasn't recorded in the Jade Slip. It only mentioned that the demonic path's secret actions were related to the 5-element sacred objects. He originally thought that obtaining 2 of these spiritual objects was already a great stroke of luck, but this far exceeded his expectations. It was simply breaking through the heavens. One person wanted the Saint Furnace, and the other wanted the 5-element spiritual objects. This could be called a happy ending. The 2 of them were prepared to pull out a tooth from a tiger's mouth, so they began to conspire. The original plan had been changed beyond recognition. In the end, both sides were satisfied with the result. After careful deliberation, for hours had passed. Qin Yu, the Saint Furnace has formidable defenses. Even if you break through the surrounding array formations, it isn't something that a golden core cultivator can deal with. Are you really confident you can handle it? Shan Wugu frowned. Qin Yu smiled. Just act according to the plan. I have my own methods. Shan Wugu stood up. All right, I will immediately make arrangements. You can go into seclusion here. His expression was firm and resolute. He strode out, clearly erasing all unnecessary thoughts from his mind. Since he had decided to go all out, he would do it with everything he had. Qin Yu lifted his hand. Several array discs fell down, sealing in the cabin's aura. It wasn't that he didn't trust Shan Wugu, but that this involved the 5-element spiritual objects. He had to be careful. With a flick of his sleeve, there was a flash of light, and the corpse of the shark demon appeared on the ground. With his current cultivation, he didn't need to dismember the mad demon anymore. He used his mind to control the magic treasure and pulled out all its teeth. Counting them, there were 312 of them. Time was of the essence, so there was no need to say anything else. Begin. As for the Saint Furnace protection that Shan Wugu spoke of, Qin Yu indeed didn't have the strength to break through it, but this didn't stop him from having enough confidence in himself. Storm Flow. The demonic path refining method that Yu Qi had left him in the past was extremely crude and effective. Unfortunately, it was a one-time transaction, and the consumption of materials was terrifying. The average person simply couldn't afford it. Love, Go Small, say, Netku even putting aside the materials, besides Qin Yu, who had the golden title of a demon body cultivator, who could release so much blood essence at once. Storm Flow was not something that just anyone could afford to play. 10 hours later, 93 shark demon teeth were refined. Qin Yu's face was pale. He stopped for the time being and swallowed a pill to restore himself. Shan Wugu returned to the deck and ordered that no one was to disturb Qin Yu. Then he picked out several trusted aides and hurried away. The demonic cultivators under him looked at the Saint Sun's back, all of them dispirited. Although they didn't know what use the Saint Furnace had, it was an indisputable fact that the Saint Lord valued it. Now that Shan Wugu had been expelled by Deep Blue and all the credit had been taken away, his status in the Total Faction headquarters would become even more awkward in the future. With a sigh, the demonic cultivators scattered. No one noticed that in the eyes of one of them, there was a hint of pride hidden beneath the worry and anxiety. He looked up in the direction that Shan Wugu and the others left in, a thoughtful expression on his face. A moment later, with an angry roar, there was a loud bang and a figure was sent flying away. Demonic light wildly surged around his body. It was clear that he had a treasure protecting him. Even so, blood gushed out from his nose and mouth, and a stabbing pain came from his chest. It was unknown just how many bones had been broken. With a scream, this person turned and fled, diving into the black clouds. Shan Wugu was enraged. Capture him at all costs! Whoosh, whoosh, the demonic cultivator shot into the skies. Shadethorn Demon paled, his face filled with fear. He never thought that even with the demonic treasure to hide, he would still be discovered. Thinking about it, Shan Wugu's guard had been raised because of the leak last time. He had been too careless. The pain in his chest became increasingly heavy. Every breath he took brought with it a burning smell of blood, and the circulation of demonic energy in his body stagnated. Behind him, there was an endless aura. It was clear that someone was chasing him. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before he was overtaken. Suddenly, Shadethorn Demon's complexion changed, and he came to a stop. In front of him, a figure stepped out of the fog. Shadethorn Demon recognized him. He was an early Golden Core demonic cultivator that Shan Wugu had subdued not too long ago. Wordwind Demon. That's right, this person's strength was sloppy and ordinary. His only advantage was his speed. Not too long ago, Shadethorn Demon had secretly mocked this person for being a useless decoration. He never imagined that he would be blocked today. Shadethorn Demon took a deep breath. He suppressed the tumbling blood in his body and lifted a hand to attack. Wait! Wordwind Demon waved his hands again and again. His thin and old face was filled with panic. Fellow Taoist Su, I have come to save you. Su Yuan was Shadethorn Demon's alias. His eyes flashed. Wordwind Demon, what is the meaning of this? Wordwind Demon smiled. Shan Wugu's defeat has already been decided. I have thoughts of joining Saint Sun Deep Blue. So I ask fellow Taoist Su to recommend me. Shadethorn Demon relaxed a little. Wordwind Demon hadn't been a subordinate of Shan Wugu for too long. In the current situation, it was normal for him to have thoughts of betrayal. Although Shadethorn Demon despised Wordwind Demon's actions in his heart, he still revealed a friendly smile. Saint Sun Deep Blue is desperate for talent. As long as you can bring me away from here, I will definitely recommend you. Wordwind Demon was overjoyed. Good, I will bring you away now. He flicked his sleeves and demonic energy wrapped around Shadethorn Demon. The two of them were like shadows, quietly fusing into the black clouds and rapidly flying away. Shadethorn Demon turned his head, his face cold. Shan Wugu, I fear you never imagined that the person you sent to kill me would actually save me? Although he had suffered heavy injuries this time, the information he had obtained was extremely important. After reporting this to Saint Sun Deep Blue, he would surely be rewarded. Thinking of this, a smile lit up his pale face. His eyes fell on Wordwind Demon's back, filled with mockery. Who would dare to use someone who had betrayed their master? Perhaps it wouldn't be long before Saint Sun Deep Blue found some excuse to use him as cannon fodder. However, Shadethorn Demon didn't discover that Wordwind Demon's back was facing him. His old and thin face was no longer filled with flattery, replaced with indifference. In the clouds, Shan Wugu, Northgate Demon, and several of his trusted subordinates stood high in the air. Northgate, isn't it a bit too excessive for me to do this? Northgate Demon cupped his hands together. Saint Sun, there is no need to think too much. This is something Wordwind Demon did voluntarily. You promised to take revenge for him, so I'm sure he is extremely happy in his heart. Shan Wugu took a deep breath. Wordwind Demon left behind a child. When I return, I will bring him to the Total Faction headquarters. I will compensate him for all of Wordwind Demon's merits. Saint Sun is benevolent. The demonic cultivators bowed. This easily caused Shan Wugu's subordinates to acknowledge him even more. His expression was solemn. Although he still had a simple and honest face, he no longer had the heart of the past. Let's go. This is only the first step. We still have many things to do. Whoosh, whoosh, the group rapidly flew away. Netherworld Realm, Blood Red Island. With Shade Thorn Demon leading the way, the two soon arrived. Wordwind Demon was being watched over. He landed at the edge of the island, his expression nervous and his wretched face full of smiles. Deep Blue swept his eyes over him and frowned. He saved you? Shade Thorn Demon respectfully said, yes. If it weren't for this person, I fear I wouldn't have been able to return. Deep Blue sneered. What a good Shade Thorn Demon, to think you would be so stupid. You were used by others to bring back a spy, and you still don't know anything. He shouted out loud, men, capture him. Wordwind Demon's complexion rapidly paled. He screamed out, Saint Sun, forgive me. Forgive me. He turned and begged for help. Fellow Taoist Su, save me, save me. Shade Thorn Demon lowered his head, not saying a word. Deep Blue lowered his head, his sharp eyes staring at Wordwind Demon. Speak. Just what sort of trick does Shan Wugu have up his sleeve? Wordwind Demon kowtowed again and again. Saint Sun, please forgive me. I only didn't want to accompany Shan Wugu to his death. So I saved fellow Taoist Su and asked him to introduce me to you. Saint Sun, please understand that everything I say is the truth and I don't dare to lie to you. His thighs trembled and a pungent smell wafted out. The surrounding demonic cultivators widened their eyes, and then their faces filled with contempt. The world was vast, and there were truly all sorts of strange things. Some people used peeing themselves in fear, but a solemn golden core cultivator had actually peed himself in fear. Chapter 117. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go. Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Song Yan's eyes were filled with disgust. He waved his hand and ordered his subordinates to bring Wordwind Demon away. With such a personality, how could he be a spy? It seemed that Song Yan had worried too much. Thank you, Saint. Thank you. Amidst the series of grateful shouts, Wordwind Demon appeared humble and shameless. His hunched back was like withered grass that couldn't bear even the slightest weight. Holy Sun! It seems like the news that the Shadow Thorn Demon brought back should be correct. Since Shan Wugu is showing signs of a backlash, should we make preparations early? Han Sha and I respectfully asked. Song Yan's eyes were cold. E'en Thorn Devil, tell me. Dense beads of sweat dripped down Shade Thorn Demon's forehead. He fell to his knees. Saint Sun, I can guarantee that Shan Wugu has no idea how much I eavesdropped on him. Taking 10,000 steps back. Even if he knows that his scheme has been exposed, he can only act now because the St. Furnace's seal is about to be unsealed and he has no time to change his plans. Deep Blue's lips curved up in a smile. If we can kill Shan Wugu this time, that will be your greatest merit. The Shady Thorn Demon was elated, but then he was a little worried. Based on his understanding of the Holy Sun, if this matter went smoothly, he would definitely be rewarded handsomely. But what if he secretly prayed? Shanwugu, you have to come. And at this time, the Shanwugu, that Shade-Thorn demon, was praying to, had already led Northgate demon and several other trusted subordinates away from the Netherworld realm. Winds billowed above the Netherworld sea. The demonic cultivators stood high in the skies. Shanwugu had a solemn expression. He said in a low voice, "Everyone, you can still withdraw now. Otherwise, once you take this step forward, you will be tied together with me. We will live and die together." Northgate demon fell to his knees. "I am willing to follow the Saint's son and sacrifice my life for you." "We pledge our lives to follow the Holy Son." All of them knelt in unison. Shanwugu laughed. "Good. Then let us give it our all." He took out a jade bottle and gave one to each of them. "Take it. In the shortest time possible, do your best to control as many sea demons as possible." Northgate demon had a calm expression. It was clear he already knew of this. As for the other demonic cultivators, they revealed looks of shock. The medicine to control the sea demons was obtained through hard work by the headquarters. There wasn't much of it, and almost all of it was given to them to bring to the sea for use. Now, Shanwugu had casually taken out so many treasures, several times the amount of the total headquarters. The shock he caused could be imagined. In an instant, everyone's eyes lit up. It seemed like Saint Sun Shanwugu wasn't without foundation in the main altar. In other words, his hidden background was far beyond everyone's imagination. Following such a person would naturally lead to a bright future. The demonic cultivators bowed respectfully, then turned around and charged into the sea. With the controlling elixir in hand, they were only afraid that the sea demons they encountered would not be strong enough. They had nothing to fear. Shanwugu remained expressionless. To control the sea monster medicine, this was another long story. The corners of his mouth twitched as he thought of the years he spent as a herb man. Then his face turned cold. Back then, after he survived, he swore in his heart that his fate would never be controlled by others again. If Shanwugu wanted to become a true powerhouse of this world, then the Saint Furnace was the turning point to change his destiny. 2 days later, the 312 shark demon teeth were all refined, indicating that the first set of storm flow magic treasures had been refined. With a thought, the 312 shark demon teeth revolved around his body. Because he had refined his blood essence, he could freely control them. Even with the powerful demon body, Chinyu still felt a deep weariness. As one's cultivation level increased, the storm flow magic treasure seemed to become more difficult to refine. Of course, its power also increased proportionally. However, it had to be pointed out that not all materials could be used to refine a storm flow magic treasure. Chinyu had killed 20 golden core realm variation sea monsters and found 2 that met the requirements. This could be considered a stroke of luck, but good luck in itself was something that others couldn't help but feel envious of. He swallowed the pill, closed his eyes, and began to refine. Chinyu fully restored himself. After a day and night, his weakened blood vitality was restored and his magic power even increased. Shwa, he opened his eyes. With a flick of his sleeves, a second sea monster corpse appeared. In order to be safe, Chinyu didn't mind preparing 2 storm flow magic treasures. What was different was that this sea monster corpse met the refining requirements. It was a selection of 197 bones. Another 3 days passed. Chinyu pushed open the door. Shanwugu was standing outside, as if he had been waiting for a long time. "How is it?" The 2 of them spoke at the same time. The tacit understanding they had developed over the years allowed them to sense each other's confidence. "When do we do it?" Chinyu smiled. "Speak. The faster, the better." Chinyu narrowed his eyes. "Then let's do it today." The demonic Chi ship quietly sailed forward. The hull of the ship shone with a faint black light, expelling the dead souls from the nether realm, not daring to approach. "Love, go, Small, say, Netka the Blood Source Island drifted with the current deep in the underworld territory. As the demonic Chi ship sailed straight, it apparently had a way to locate Song Yun's team. Qin Yu glanced at the honest-looking Shan Wugu. It seemed that he had made arrangements a long time ago. Although he was gratified, he also felt a bit lost. Suddenly, the demonic energy ship came to a stop. Shan Wugu turned around. Qin Yu, Blood Source Island is in front of us. This ship can only go so far. His complexion darkened. The Saint Furnace will protect itself and spread its terrifying poison strength. You must be careful. Qin Yu smiled. Don't worry. Just wait for my signal. Shua. He stepped out of the demonic energy ship and disappeared in the blink of an eye. At this moment, the deck was filled with trusted subordinates. The ordinary subordinates were left outside the nether realm and did not participate in this matter. At this moment, many of them wanted to say something, but were hesitating. The reason was simple. They didn't trust Qin Yu. Just how powerful was the Saint Furnace's defenses? With Deep Blue and the other powerhouses of the demonic path guarding it, wanting to steal it by himself was nothing more than a pipe dream. No one thought that after spending so much time and effort to prepare, the most critical link would be Qin Yu himself. If it weren't for Shan Wugu having sufficient prestige, they would have already spoken out against him. Shan Wugu had a faint expression. I know what you're thinking, but since Qin Yu is taking action, he must be confident in himself. Northgate Demon sighed inwardly. He didn't know why the Saint's son was so confident in Qin Yu. Didn't he know that the success or failure of this matter would affect his future, and even his life? Alas, now that things have come to this, I can only take it one step at a time. Time passed bit by bit. The black cloud was incomparably quiet. Not a single sound came from it. Northgate Demon's restless heart became increasingly heavy. Beads of sweat began to form on the foreheads of the surrounding demonic cultivators. Qin Yu failed? Or did he flee because he knew he was no match for him? Or did he betray them? Northgate Demon hesitated. Saint Sun. Wait, Shan Wugu said. A thin layer of black ice extended out from the blood-red sea. Even without touching it, one could feel the terrifying aura contained within. Qin Yu stood outside the black ice, his expression calm as if he were waiting for something. Suddenly, a smile lifted the corners of his lips. He turned his palm, and a foot of sea blue light quietly bloomed. Lifting a foot, he stepped onto the black ice and stood still, allowing the black aura to invade his feet. This black energy was the cold ice poison that originated from the Saint Furnace. Once it was tainted with the aura of life, it would become like the netherworld ghost flames that would never rest until one's flesh, blood, and soul were completely erased, not leaving a single trace in the world. But to Qin Yu, this so-called Saint Furnace poison was only an appetizer. A deep blue halo illuminated his palm. The black energy continuously invaded his limbs and bones, but in the next moment it was expelled and gathered together. It was like a black meridian had appeared in his body, all the way to his right index finger. Between his fingers, a faint halo of light circulated, as if it were made of beautiful jade. The black ice beneath his feet began to melt, as if a massive amount of strength was being drawn out. Qin Yu smiled. It seemed that after today, the poison finger would return. Presumably, its might would leave the one who received it satisfied. A moment later, Qin Yu stepped forwards, and the ice behind him quietly shattered. Time quietly passed. Qin Yu maintained a steady pace as he walked forwards. If someone were to stand high in the air and look down, they would discover that the black ice was rapidly shrinking. Suddenly, Qin Yu's complexion changed. Wherever he stepped, a powerful suction force spread out and a massive amount of black energy gathered towards him. Kacha! Kacha! The black ice began to spread out from beneath his feet. In a breath of time, Qin Yu was completely sealed in ice. The terrifying poison invaded him like a tsunami. If it were anyone else, even a hollow nascent soul realm master, they would instantly die. Even a nascent soul cultivator would have to rely on their cultivation to break free from the imprisonment of the poison and escape. It was clear that the Saint Furnace that Shan Wugu spoke of had sensed Qin Yu's existence and had decided to kill this little insect that had stolen its poison. Atop the blood-red sea, an ice sculpture stood silently. Billowing black energy wildly poured into it like rivers flowing into the sea. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, the ice sculpture remained the same. The figure within didn't seem to have any intention of falling over. There seemed to be a cold and angry snort in the air. The black energy retreated like a tide, and the black ice on the sea instantly vanished. Qin Yu opened his eyes, a sharp light flashing within them. He had a thoughtful look on his face. It seemed that the demonic path Saint Furnace was very close to awakening, but it was clearly restricted by some sort of seal, so it couldn't directly attack. In order to avoid any accidents, he couldn't allow the demonic path Saint Furnace to unseal itself. He lifted a hand and took out a black robe. Then he stepped forwards and exploded forwards. Netherworld realm, blood-red island. Deep Blue had an excited expression. He never thought that among the sea monsters his subordinates had captured, there would be a special bloodline hidden within them. Although he felt a bit regretful that this powerful bloodline would be destroyed like this, the Saint Furnace's awakening ahead of time was still a pleasant surprise. After today, his status as the Saint's son would be as solid as a rock. Deep Blue was in high spirits. He looked up at the black clouds outside the island. Shan Wugu, in the end, I have won this battle. Although Deep Blue appeared confident in front of everyone, as if everything was under his control, he was well aware just how difficult his opponent was to deal with. Shan Wugu hadn't been in the Total Faction headquarters for long, and he had obtained the support of the elders. In a short period of time, he had formed a force that couldn't be underestimated. For Shan Wugu to be able to participate in the unsealing of the Saint Furnace in the sea region was a dangerous signal. This meant that he had obtained the qualifications to directly confront Deep Blue and compete on the same stage, even if it was only on the surface. But in the end, he had the last laugh. Just like before, he had strangled the threat at the source. Suddenly, cries of alarm sounded out from outside Blood-Red Island. Deep Blue's heart shrank. He asked what happened. The demonic cultivator guard flew in a panic. He screamed, "Saint Sun, the Saint Furnace's ice suddenly disappeared." Deep Blue's pupil shrank, but his expression didn't change. The Saint Furnace is about to awaken, so withdrawing its strength is normal. What are you panicking about? Han Sha and I could sense the gloominess in Deep Blue's expression. He quietly said, "Saint Sun, since the Saint Furnace has withdrawn its strength, we should strengthen our defenses to avoid any unexpected problems." Deep Blue nodded without expression. Han Sha and I waved his hand, and demonic cultivators shot into the skies. Billowing demonic energy erupted, instantly forming a great array formation. This array formation was called the Protection of the Heavenly Demon. It gathered the strength of all demonic cultivators and summoned an invisible heavenly demon to descend. Anyone that intruded would suffer the attacks of the heavenly demon. Their divine sense would be thrown into chaos, and they would die, their flesh and blood becoming food for the heavenly demon. Whoosh! The black clouds outside the island were like willow catkins in the wind. They were suddenly scattered apart, and a black-robed figure stepped forwards. Chapter 118. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Song Yun squinted. He didn't think that only one person would appear in front of him. He dared to charge into his camp alone. What audacity! As long as this person stepped into the range of the sky demon protection, he had 100 ways to kill him. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, black robe suddenly stopped. Love, go, small, say, Net Deep Blue stuffily coughed. This person had stopped just outside the heavenly demon protection by a hair's breadth. This clearly wasn't a coincidence. This person's soul force must be extremely powerful to be able to sense the fluctuations of the heavenly demon protection. But so what if he noticed it? The unsealing of the Saint Furnace was imminent. In just a moment, there would be no need for him to attack, and the black-robed man would be forced to retreat. Song Yin was arrogant and conceited, but he wasn't stupid. If he had a perfect method, why would he need more twists and turns? Thinking about this, he sneered. Did Song Yin think that Song Yin would just rush out? Ridiculous. The black-robed man was silent, as if he was helpless in the current situation. The disdain in Deep Blue's eyes deepened, and the corners of his lips curled up in a cold smile. At this moment, Deep Blue saw Black Robe raise his hand and wave it forward lightly. However, he did not see that the other hand hidden under the black robe slightly crushed the talisman. On the demonic energy ship, Shan Wugu's eyes brightened. He lifted his palm, and the talisman in it began to shine. This was the signal to attack. Shan Wugu took a deep breath and gripped the talisman. He said, "Release the sea monsters." Northgate Demon and the others attacked at the same time. They took out their conches and blew into them. A violent roar sounded out, and the cabin door was ruthlessly torn apart, scattering into black demonic energy. Whoosh, whoosh, ferocious figures leapt out, their blood-red eyes filled with the desire to destroy as they madly rushed forward. The black cloud suddenly surged, and a low, rumbling sound resembling that of a tsunami quickly approached from afar. Saint Child Deep Blue's heart shrank as he suddenly had a bad premonition. Then, on the blood-colored island, countless demonic cultivators widened their eyes at the same time, their faces filled with shock. Hundreds of sea demons formed a flood that madly charged towards Blood Red Island. The ruthlessness and destruction in their eyes caused the faces of demonic cultivators to pale. Defend! Saint Sun Deep Blue only had time to let out a roar before the heavenly demon protection, formed by the demonic cultivators, was smashed to pieces by the sea monsters. The summoned heavenly demons didn't even have time to unleash their ability to disrupt one's mind before their energy source was cut off. It wasn't that the protection of the heavenly demon wasn't strong enough. It was just that when faced with hundreds of brainless sea demons, there was no room for him to use it at all. However, since he was already here, how could he not gain anything? Ah! With miserable screams, several demonic cultivators fell to the ground. Their bodies rapidly withered, and in just a few breaths of time they were like desiccated corpses, all of their flesh and blood sucked away. Deep Blue's anger soared to the heavens. His eyes locked onto Chinyu, but there was a trace of hesitation in them, summoning hundreds of sea demons. What kind of strength was that? No, to summon hundreds of sea demons alone, one must at least be at the nascent soul stage. With such strength, there was no need to go through so much trouble to deal with them. The black-robed man had companions and not just one. Only this could explain the origins of the several hundred sea monsters. Shan Wugu, in the nether realm, the one who dared to oppose him was definitely him. Looking at these sea monsters again, they looked exactly like the sea monsters that had been controlled by controlling medicines. Although Saint Sun Deep Blue didn't know where Shan Wugu had obtained so many controlling medicines, this didn't stop Saint Sun Deep Blue's killing intent from rising. Shan Wugu, you dare to collude with outsiders and have designs on the Saint Furnace? You deserve to die 10,000 times over. With a loud roar, Deep Blue lifted a hand and a blood ring appeared in the air. Blood red light rose up, condensing into a ghostly face that hurtled towards Chinyu. First he would kill this person and then suppress Shan Wugu. The Saint Furnace was about to be unsealed, and he could not allow anyone to destroy it. The black-robed man turned around and looked at Deep Blue. His eyes were icy cold, causing the hairs on his back to stand on end and a chill to rise in his heart. Whoosh! A spear appeared, tearing through the air. It was tyrannical and cruel, as if everything in the world would be pierced through and crushed. What a powerful cultivation! Deep Blue's eyebrows arched up, fighting spirit rising in his heart. In order to become the demonic Path Saint Sun, he had defeated countless opponents, all of whom were extremely strong. Beneath the nascent soul realm, who in this vast world could be his match? Although this black-robed man was strong, he was destined to become another soul under his hands. Hum! The blood ring trembled and blood-red light gushed out, becoming even more intense. The ghostly face strangely cackled and emitted flames, as if it were a demon that had emerged from the depths of hell. These flames carried with them the power of filth. As long as a magic tool was tainted, its power would be greatly reduced. It could even directly affect the owner of the magic tool and cause the power of filth to pour into their soul. The long spear tyrannically shot forwards. Deep Blue's eyes were cold and cruel. He wanted to see the black-robed man's expression in the next moment. With such a precious treasure destroyed, even if his soul was strong enough to resist the invasion of filth, he would still feel incomparably pained. Without the long spear magic tool, this person's strength would surely be greatly reduced. At that time, it would be time for him to begin his slaughter. Beneath the black-robed man's eyes were incomparably tranquil, calm without any ripples. Calm because of his solemn self-confidence. As he looked at the flaming, ghostly face, the corners of his lips curled up. Without warning, the heaven-lifting spear thrust forwards, ruthlessly arriving. The spear body trembled. The moment it stabbed into the flaming, ghostly face, a wild aura swept out in all directions. Deep Blue's eyes widened. What kind of rhythm was this? Before he could regain his composure, the long spear exploded. The spear fragments mixed with the horrifying strength of the magic tool's explosion swept out like lava from underground. The flaming, ghostly face was instantly turned into a sieve. Its strange laughter turned into pained howls. Although it wasn't a true entity, it was still heavily wounded by the explosion of the long spear. It fled backwards in panic. Several demonic path cultivators that were fighting with the sea monsters screamed miserably as they were turned into gourds of blood. They fell to the ground and soon lost all signs of life. Deep Blue stuffily coughed. His complexion paled and blood flowed down from the corners of his lips. The blood ring was terrifyingly powerful and also contained many miraculous mysteries. This was an object that he had refined with his blood, and it would rise and fall together with him. Now that the blood ring had been wounded by the explosion of the long spear, he immediately received severe internal injuries. If he was weaker in a frontal battle, then he could forget about it. But his opponent had used such a method that didn't follow common sense. This left Deep Blue incomparably depressed and burning with rage. He slapped his chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood didn't fall to the ground, but instead exploded outwards, fusing into the blood ring. After obtaining the support of its master's blood essence, the magic tool, refined by blood, was stimulated to the limit. The blood ring dimmed, and the ghostly face fiercely roared. It attacked with anger and injuries, its speed rising to the limit. It opened its mouth to reveal black fangs that were as sharp as thorns. Self-destructing magic treasures were indeed terrifying. But could it be that you could take out another treasure of this level? Since you dared to damage my magic tool, this Saint Sun will have you die without a grave. At this time, a round shield suddenly appeared. As magic power poured into it, it rapidly grew in size. The ghostly face was brimming with confidence. Just as it was about to enjoy the delicious flesh and blood, it crashed into the round shield without any preparations at all. Pah! The sound was deep and heavy, and there was a hint of bitterness in it. Just listening to it made one's scalp tingle with numbness. Deep Blue's entire face twisted, as if he had really crashed into the shield. His mouth and eyes were crooked, and blood flowed out without end. He was in an extremely distressed state. Deep Blue swore that he had never been so disgraced as he was today. The shocked gazes of his subordinates made him wish he could tear apart everyone who saw this. But then he didn't have time to be ruthless. He was hit twice by the round shield. A terrifying explosion rang out, and the ghost face was sent tumbling back, howling miserably. There was also a hint of fear in his eyes. The cultivator across from it was far too terrifying. Deep Blue spat out several mouthfuls of blood. He tottered, his chest filled with shock and indignation. He was shocked because the black-robed man had been so bold and heroic as to blow up 2 powerful magic tools in a row. It had to be known that their quality was extremely precious, even to a golden core. The losses from 2 self-detonations were astonishing. He was indignant because the other party didn't play his cards according to common sense. Just by relying on his wealth, he had suffered a great loss. The black-robed man didn't give him time to think. His figure flashed, and he soared deep into Blood Red Island, where a great furnace stood. He wanted to steal the Saint Furnace. Deep Blue's heart shook. He knew that the Saint Furnace had a spell left behind by the Saint Monarch, and it was impossible for this person to succeed. But if he touched the Saint Monarch spell, that would mean his failure, and he would surely disappoint the Saint Monarch. He absolutely could not be allowed to touch the Saint Furnace. Deep Blue's eyes flashed with hesitation. He clenched his teeth and pointed a finger. There was a buzzing sound above his head. The blood ring trembled. Runes appeared on its surface, and the phantom of a python shot out. Die. He roared, and countless rays of blood-red light were drawn out. The python phantom instantly condensed, hissing as it swept out its tail. It was hundreds of feet long, and its massive body was covered in thick scales. Its triangular eyes were filled with a cold, killing intent. This python was the spirit of the blood ring. After it was killed, it had been sealed within with a secret, demonic path technique. Although it wasn't a true spirit treasure, it still had its own marvelous aspects. For many years, Deep Blue had carefully refined it. Every time he killed an enemy, the blood essence and soul would be swallowed up by the python and accumulated within its body. In these years, the blood python had gradually shown signs of transforming into a blood-flood dragon. Once it finished its transformation, its strength would rise and it would be able to contend with a nascent soul cultivator. But now, as it was summoned ahead of time, all of this had become a bubble. All of his years of painstaking effort had been wasted. Deep Blue's hatred could be imagined. Killing intent swirled in his heart. The blood python held out its speed astonishing. It left a trail of blood in the air as it blocked in front of the Saint Furnace. On the demonic energy ship, Chinyu finally sent out a signal. Several hundred sea monsters swarmed out. Immediately, deep within the black clouds, there was a terrifying rumbling sound. The battle had begun. Everyone relaxed a little, because at least Chinyu was still standing on their side. But in the blink of an eye, that turned into worry. With just him alone, even if he had the help of several hundred sea monsters, how could he possibly break through the Saint Furnace's poison, much less slaughter his way into Blood Red Island? Shan Wugu was silent for a moment. He lifted a hand and pointed forwards. His fingertips fell into the air and faint ripples spread out. Soon, the ripples dispersed and the scene became clear. What appeared before them was the situation on Blood Red Island. From the angle of view and field of view, this should be the eyes of a cultivator. What they saw was also what he saw. Its Whirlwind demon. Before he left, he swallowed down a demonic insect from the high command. Shan Wugu said in a low voice. The complexions of Northgate Demon and the others changed. They subconsciously revealed looks of fear. It was clear they were terrified of demonic insects. But as they thought about how Whirlwind Demon was prepared to die, they understood. At this time, the scene in the air was that of Deep Blue summoning the blood ring, condensing it into a ghostly face to kill Chinyu. A demonic cultivator cried out in alarm, "Blood, refining ring!" The others all had ugly complexions. Deep Blue was tyrannically strong. In the high command, besides the several nascent Soul Supreme Elders, he was basically an invincible existence. The blood refining ring could be called illustrious. In these past years, countless people had tried to challenge his position, but all of them had died beneath the blood refining ring. Their flesh and blood, their souls, were swallowed up. Qin Yu was strong, but when placed together with Deep Blue, no one thought highly of him. But in the next moment, the demonic cultivator's eyes widened as if they had seen a ghost. Their throats gurgled, unable to speak. Chapter 119. Genius in 1 second. Remember, love, go away. This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. The scene that happened in the blink of an eye was deeply imprinted in their minds, never to be erased again. The spear had exploded, the ghostly face had been blown away, and Deep Blue had been injured. It was the first time they had seen someone strike Song Yun head-on in just a short time. But the price was far too great. Although they weren't present, it wasn't hard to judge just how powerful the spear was. This was absolutely a top-grade Golden Core realm magic tool. To be able to detonate it without hesitation, disregarding everything else, just this level of skill was praiseworthy. Praise flashed in their eyes. This was because detonating a magic tool could only last for a moment. Although Deep Blue had been injured, he hadn't been wounded to the core. He would soon counterattack, and it would surely be even more terrifying. How could Qin Yu resist? And indeed, in the scene that Wordwind Demon saw, Deep Blue had attacked. With the support of his blood essence, the power of the blood refining ring rose by 30%. As the demonic cultivators watched the ghostly face rush out, they sucked in a breath of cold air. How could Qin Yu block such a terrifying strike? Bang! That sound was naturally made up in their minds. Then they saw the round shield appear in front of them, the ghostly face crash into it, and Deep Blue's distressed appearance. Before the fear on their faces faded, it turned to shock and disbelief, making their expressions strange. But this didn't stop them from feeling sore in Saint Sun, Deep Blue's heart. This definitely wasn't a good feeling. In the scene, the round shield launched 2 consecutive strikes. They watched helplessly as this amazing defensive magic tool was destroyed once more. The demonic cultivators fell silent. They unconsciously glanced at Shan Wugu, thinking, Saint Sun, just what sort of background did your friend have? Shan Wugu was expressionless. He lightly said, I said that Qin Yu can be trusted. He was calm and indifferent, as if everything was within his grasp. But no one knew that beneath his sleeves his palms were trembling. And at this time, the situation changed once more. Qin Yu followed the plan and hurtled towards the Saint Furnace. Deep Blue had summoned a blood python from the blood refining ring. That's the spirit of the blood refining ring. It is rumored that this spirit was created by Deep Blue's grandfather, the nascent soul elder way of the main altar. He personally killed the monster beast bloodthirsty python and sealed its soul within. The body of this blood python is so big, and I can see the bulge on its head. It is obvious that it is not far from becoming a flood dragon. However, since it was summoned today, its path to becoming a flood dragon has been severed. Even so, this blood python's strength is definitely beyond the false nascent soul realm. Moreover, it's connected to Deep Blue's mind. When the two of them join hands, their strength is more than doubled. Shan Wugu gripped his fists. Qin Yu, you absolutely could not fail. This time he was going all out. He absolutely could not lose. Suddenly, Northgate Demon cried out in alarm. This is bad. Qin Yu has been ambushed. Shan Wugu fiercely looked up. He could see that Qin Yu had a dazed expression on his face, as if he had indeed been plotted against. Love, go, small, say, neck kabut out of familiarity. He felt that something was not quite right. It did not seem like he had been plotted against. Instead, it felt like he was distracted. Even the calm and steady Shan Wugu nearly cried at this moment. Big brother, in this critical moment of life and death, Is it really okay for you to be distracted? That's right. Qin Yu's mind was wandering at this moment. This was because he could clearly see the demonic path Saint furnace that Shan Wugu spoke of. This was clearly the furnace in the Eastern Mountain sect's underground pill disposal department that was used to incinerate waste pills. Countless images flashed through Qin Yu's mind. Then a thought appeared in his mind. Perhaps the root cause of the Eastern Mountain sect's destruction was this furnace. Deep Blue instantly grasped that Qin Yu had fallen into a trance. Although he didn't know why this was happening, he clearly wouldn't open his mouth to warn him. While you're distracted, I'll take your life. The blood python roared. Boundless blood energy erupted. Its figure was like a bolt of crimson lightning as it hurtled towards Qin Yu. Before it arrived, its cruel aura was like a mountain that covered Qin Yu. With the blood python's speed, he simply didn't have time to respond. Deep Blue diabolically grinned. Die, you hateful black-robed fellow. In truth, Qin Yu indeed didn't have time to respond, but his expression was calm, as if he didn't know what fate awaited him. He lifted his hand. Light flashed, and 197 bones appeared, each one emitting a sharp aura that seemed as if it could cut apart the world. Whoosh, whoosh, the 197 bones buzzed together. In the blink of an eye, they gathered into a raging current. From afar, it looked like a white bone arrow piercing through the skies. The blood python was indeed powerful. With Qin Yu's cultivation, he would need to expend some effort to kill it. But in the face of the extremely brutal storm flow magical weapon, it only had time to let out a cry before it was smashed into pieces. The blood ring trembled. Countless cracks appeared on its surface before it disintegrated. Puff! Deep Blue spat out a mouthful of blood. His complexion paled. His blood refining treasure had been destroyed, and he had been severely wounded. Without any time to be shocked or feel heartache, he hurriedly dodged. Even so, he was still swept up by the aura of storm flow. His chest instantly ruptured and blood flowed all over his body. As he tumbled backwards, Deep Blue's ears buzzed. He opened his eyes wide and stubbornly stared at Qin Yu's figure. Storm flow. This was definitely storm flow. He had actually grasped a terrifying refining technique that had been lost to the demonic path for a long time. Just who was this black-robed person? Deep Blue had a distressed expression. What use was there in thinking about this? He was about to die. He never thought that death would arrive so quickly. But as the saint son of the demonic path, even in death I should have my own dignity. If you want me to lower my head, that is impossible. Deep Blue arrogantly looked up. He closed his eyes, waiting for the slaughter to arrive. Rumble, rumble. This sound came from the 197 bones of storm flow, tearing apart the furnace's array formation. Beneath a strength that surpassed the limits of what it could withstand, it was easily destroyed. Suddenly, a curtain of black fell over the surface of the demonic path's Saint Furnace. It was like flowing water, thick and viscous. As it shook, a giant vortex appeared. The demonic visage emerged from within. Its eyes were shut tight as it faced Qin Yu. Then it opened its mouth and roared. Rumble, rumble. Great waves rose up in the depths of his consciousness. Qin Yu stuffily coughed, and his face paled. It was like countless needles were stabbing into his mind. Pa! Pa! The 197 bones bore the brunt of the attack. They trembled and collapsed one after another, turning into powder in the blink of an eye. Deep Blue's eyes widened, and he immediately revealed a happy expression. This was the Saint Lord's demonic visage. This old man was truly farsighted and had left behind an avatar here. With the strength of this avatar, it was more than enough to cut down this black-robed person. And indeed, the terrifying storm flow demonic treasure was directly crushed in front of the Saint Lord demonic visage. On the demonic energy ship, Shan Wugu and the others fell silent. The strength that Qin Yu revealed had far surpassed their imaginations. In a frontal confrontation, he had completely crushed Shan Wugu, and with the storm flow demonic treasure, He even had the strength to contend with a nascent soul. But no one imagined that the Saint Lord would leave behind an avatar on the Saint Furnace. The Saint Lord demonic visage, even if it was only condensed from demonic energy, still had 30% of the Saint Lord's strength. It was more than enough to crush an ordinary nascent soul. So how could Chinyu possibly escape? Who would have thought that after being pleasantly surprised for so long, this would be the result? Once Chinyu's identity was exposed, Shan Wugu would inevitably be implicated. Which one of them would have a good ending? The demonic cultivators all had distressed expressions. Even Shan Wugu couldn't help but reveal a look of worry and sadness. But with things having come this far, with the Saint Lord demonic visage taking action, no one was able to change anything. Qin Yu's body tensed. Magic power wildly revolved within him, and only then was he just barely able to resist the terrifying suppression coming from the outside world. Even so, even with the powerful demon body, his flesh and bones were constantly groaning. He didn't know what the demonic visage in front of him was, but he could feel an extremely familiar aura coming from it. In Immortal Eclipse Valley, beneath the radiant redwood, in his battle with Pill Crucible, the giant hand that had reached out, this was the demonic path's demon monarch. Qin Yu bitterly smiled. He never thought that this matter would draw out such a super strong existence. But with things having come this far, there was no way to retreat. He could only continue onwards to the end. With a deep roar, Qin Yu flicked his sleeves. 312 shark monster teeth appeared in front of him. A fist smashed into his chest. Blood gushed out and began to burn, adhering to the 312 shark monster teeth. Whoosh, whoosh. The sound of breaking air resounded through the horizon. Qin Yu crazily stimulated his cultivation, pouring all of his strength into it. Hum, hum. The second set of storm flow magic tools emitted the strongest humming sound. On the black curtain, the demonic visage seemed to feel a threat. Its eyes trembled and it struggled to open. A blinding black light shot out, so fast that it was impossible to see it. In the blink of an eye, it collided with the 312 shark monster teeth. Bang, bang, there was a heaven-shaking explosion. A terrifying strength swept out. Deep Blue's mouth fell open as he was sent flying away like a rag doll. Blood wildly gushed out from every orifice of his head. His already serious injuries became even more severe under this impact. But he seemed to have lost his soul. He stubbornly stared at Qin Yu, his bloodshot eyes filled with shock and disbelief. The second set of storm flow demonic treasures, he actually had a second set. Moreover, it was more than twice as strong as the first set. This black-robed person, just who was he? Deep Blue roared in his heart. The black curtain violently trembled. Suddenly, a faint sigh seemed to resound between the heavens and earth, one that carried with it a touch of anger and unwillingness. Pa! The demonic visage collapsed. The black curtain behind him dissipated like smoke. But at this time, a great feeling of terror arrived without warning. Qin Yu's body stiffened like iron, unable to move at all. A wisp of black energy appeared. It rushed towards Qin Yu like a living creature. At this time, a strong wind blew past. Word Wind Demon blocked in front of Qin Yu. His skinny face didn't have the slightest bit of humility, but was calm and resolute. Remind Shan Wugu to remember the promise he made to me. Shua! The black energy drilled into Word Wind Demon's body. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. But it was this sort of silent pain that chilled one's heart. His soul was forcefully pulled out from his body bit by bit, falling into the black flames where it was burned into nothingness. Who? Qin Yu's complexion paled and he gasped for breath. He glanced at Wordwind Demon's lifeless corpse and flicked his sleeves. The Saint Furnace flashed in the air and the massive furnace vanished from sight. His eyes swept over the imprisoned sea monsters, not too far away. After a moment of hesitation, He flicked his sleeves and sent out magic power to shatter the imprisonment. Whoosh! Using the blood escape art, Qin Yu was like a burning crimson meteor as he vanished into the distance. After escaping from death, the sea monsters were extremely excited. Taking advantage of the chaos on this blood-red island, they all turned and fled. The robust woman grabbed the girl in her hand and followed the crowd of people as they fled the island, completely unremarkable. The moment that the girl rushed into the sea, she turned and looked in the direction that Qin Yu left, her eyes deep blue. Chapter 120. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Deep Blue was still alive. He had a dazed expression on his face, but soon after he gnashed his teeth in anger. That damned black-robed man didn't even bother to kill him. Love, go, small, say, Netka, do you think it's impossible to pose a threat to him? Damn it, you will definitely regret this. On Blood Red Island, the demonic cultivators finally stabilized their footing and gathered together in a sorry state. All of them were injured and their faces were pale. It was not easy for them to survive the attack of hundreds of sea demons. Of course, the most important reason was that the sea monsters that were desperately fighting, although their eyes were still bloodshot, were now a bit more fearful and had taken the initiative to retreat. The controlling potion had lost its effect. Han Shanai scowled. Saint Sun, what do we do? Deep Blue spat out a mouthful of blood and fell backwards. Having the Saint Furnace stolen was a great sin. Even if he didn't die this time, his future would be ruined. Who? The black clouds around Blood Red Island were torn apart, and a giant demonic energy ship appeared. Shan Wugu flew out, his face full of shock. What happened? Where is the Saint Furnace? Deep Blue was enraged. Shan Wugu, you despicable villain. You actually dare to join forces with outsiders to steal the Saint Furnace. The total headquarters will never forgive you. Shan Wugu coldly glanced at him, ignoring his clamoring. He turned and said, You all stay here and treat him. I'm going to chase after the Saint Furnace. He turned and hurried away. Northgate Demon waved his hand and a demonic cultivator flew out from the demonic ship. Although he was panic-stricken as he saw his past arrogant opponents end up in such a pitiful state, there was a bit of happiness in his eyes. A few fiendish cultivators looked at Shady Spike Demon. His body trembled, and his pale face lost all color. Deep Blue still wanted to say something, but he was pulled back by Han Shanai, who said in a low voice, Saint Sun, a real man knows when to yield and when to stand tall. The current situation is unfavorable, so we should be patient. After hesitating for a moment, he said, Moreover, this matter shouldn't have been done by Shan Wugu. If he really had such a strong backer, he wouldn't have been forced into such a situation before counterattacking. In other words, he could have made all of us disappear from the sea. Song Yun grimaced. He pulled himself together as he knew that Han Shanai was right. With black-robe strength, how could he possibly allow himself to be controlled by Shan Wugu? Several days ago, he had driven Shan Wugu away, but he never imagined that he would actually help him. The responsibility for losing the Saint Furnace could only fall onto his head. The more he thought, the more aggrieved he felt. Song Yin spurted out more blood and fainted. Shan Wugu rapidly moved forwards. His expression was calm, but he was actually amazed by the strength that Qin Yu had revealed. It could even force back the demonic face of a sage lord. It was enough to put up a fight against a nascent soul cultivator. Even if Qin Yu borrowed the strength of a storm flow demonic treasure, a magic tool was still a part of a cultivator's overall strength. Unfortunately, while the storm flow demonic treasure was powerful, it would be destroyed after being used once. Even so, Qin Yu could still be called the strongest golden core Shan Wugu had ever encountered. Suddenly, Shan Wugu looked up, a smile on his face. If you didn't reveal your aura on your own initiative, I wouldn't have been able to sense it. No wonder even someone as smart as Deep Blue couldn't tell who you were. Beneath the black robe, a light chuckle sounded out. This time, I risked my life and paid a tremendous price. Shan Wugu curled his lips. Do you think I don't know you? If it wasn't worth it, would you have done this? His eyes brightened. Let's go, it's time to harvest. Soon, the two of them flew out of the netherworld realm. In a mountain range beneath the sea, they found a simple cave dwelling that had been abandoned. After draining the seawater and sealing up the cave entrance, Qin Yu flicked his sleeves and took out the Saint Furnace. The spacious cave immediately became cramped. As he looked down, he revealed a light expression. Shan Wugu was filled with excitement. He didn't miss Qin Yu's gaze. He asked with surprise, "You recognize the Saint Furnace?" Qin Yu nodded. "Potato! Do you remember when I was framed by Su Jian and entered the Eastern Mountain Sect's pill disposal department? This furnace is located beneath the Eastern Mountain Sect." He paused for a moment and continued to say, "In the past, the Eastern Mountain Sect was massacred by the demonic path and razed to the ground. I only thought it was a coincidence that the demonic path invaded. But now it seems that the reason the Eastern Mountain Sect ended up in such a state is because treasuring a treasure is a crime." Shan Wugu's eyes shook. He never thought that the Saint Furnace would come from the Eastern Mountain Sect. Qin Yu said in a low voice, "Potato! Do you know why the demonic path spent so much effort to seize the furnace and why the demon monarch placed such importance on it?" Shan Wugu shook his head. "My status in the total faction headquarters isn't high, and I only have the title of Saint Sun. I only know that the demon monarch has a great use for the Saint Furnace, but I don't know the specifics." He looked up and faintly smiled. "You have to keep your word and return the Saint Furnace to me. Otherwise, if the demon monarch is enraged, I will die without a doubt." Qin Yu was silent for a moment. "I won't harm you." Shan Wugu bitterly smiled. "I'm sorry. I've gotten used to it over the years. Don't think too much about it." Qin Yu smiled. "I understand. All right. Now that I've obtained what I need, it's your turn." Shan Wugu took a deep breath. "Give me some time." He walked over to the furnace and carefully observed it. Then he lifted his hand and cut his wrist. Blood flowed out, but it didn't fall to the ground. Rather, it hung in the air and rapidly dispersed. Drops of bright red jade surrounded the furnace in a ring. He spat out short syllables. The blood beads trembled and released a faint halo of light. This light wasn't the color of blood, but pure darkness, as if it could swallow all. "Love, go, little, say," Shan Wugu's expression was dignified. The syllables he spoke became increasingly rapid and urgent. The blood beads emitted a low hum. His complexion rapidly paled and anxiety appeared in his eyes. After a moment, he clenched his teeth and said, "Qin Yu, the demonic nature of my blood is lacking. Can you lend me a hand?" Qin Yu stepped forwards and tore open his finger. Blood flew out and fell around the Saint Furnace. The demonic nature in the blood was instantly drawn out. In his ears, he seemed to hear a long and drawn-out demonic roar. It was ancient and solemn. Shan Wugu's eyes widened. He had never felt such a pure and potent demonic nature before. Even the Holy Lord's demonic nature was suppressed by absolute strength. In terms of rank, it was inferior to Qin Yu's. In these past years, just what had he experienced? Not only did he possess a powerful cultivation, but he also possessed such a terrifying demonic nature. But soon, Shan Wugu suppressed these thoughts. In this critical moment, he didn't dare to be distracted. His syllables became steady and firm. With the help of Qin Yu's blood, opening the Saint Furnace wouldn't be difficult at all. The Saint Furnace trembled. The runes on its surface slowly lit up. An ancient and rich aura of the years, nearly condensing into essence, was slowly released from the furnace. But what was even more astonishing was the terrifying slaughter intent contained within this aura of time. Although this slaughter intent was weak, it was inconceivably strong. Qin Yu's slaughter intent was so potent that even demonic path cultivators had to revere him. But compared to this furnace, the difference was like the difference between the heavens and earth. He had no idea just what this so-called demonic path saint furnace was, and what sort of calamity it had experienced in order to condense such a slaughter intent. Shan Wugu's complexion paled, but his eyes became increasingly bright. To others, this slaughter intent was the greatest horror in the world. But in his eyes, it couldn't be more beautiful. If he could refine it, his eyes burned with a burning heat. He lifted a hand and slammed it down. Open! Hum! The surrounding beads of blood fused into the furnace. The closed furnace door opened. In the next moment, a 5-colored divine light flew out from the furnace door, faster than lightning. Qin Yu! Shan Wugu shouted out. Qin Yu flicked his sleeves. Boundless magic power surged out, weaving together into a net in the void that covered the entire space. The 5-colored divine light was trapped within. It anxiously rushed left and right, but it couldn't escape. With a thought, the fleeting flame furnace appeared. The furnace door opened on its own, and a powerful suction force covered them. The 5-colored divine light gradually came to a stop, revealing its true form. Gold, a stalk of green grass. It didn't look any different from ordinary grass. Its leaves gently swayed, surging with an endlessly sharp aura. Water, a pitch-black lotus seed. Its entire body didn't have any other colors. Circles of black light rippled in the air. Wood, a verdant willow branch. It was unknown just how long it had been cut down, but it still maintained its vibrant vitality and emitted a blazing blue divine light. Fire, a crystal the size of a child's palm. It was translucent, and if one looked at it, they would feel a stabbing pain as if they were being burned. Earth, a small mushroom. It was like a small umbrella. Its surface was covered with tiny textures, no matter which direction one looked from. These textures wove together to form the phantom of a mountain. Qin Yu smiled. 5-element spirit treasures. These were 5-element spirit treasures. He took a deep breath. His fingers contracted, and the net of magic power in the air shrank. The fleeting flame furnace's suction force increased with it, forcing the 5 spiritual objects into it. Bang! The furnace mouth closed. Qin Yu recalled the fleeting flame furnace. He lifted a hand and poured in magic power, sealing away the 5-element spiritual objects and placing them in his storage ring. Shan Wugu cupped his hands together. Qin Yu, congratulations. Qin Yu nodded. What do you plan on doing next? Shan Wugu licked his lips. That's what I wanted to say. Qin Yu, the infernal energy within the saint furnace is quite beneficial to me. If you help guard me, I'll be done soon. Okay. Shan Wugu sat down cross-legged. He took a deep breath and sucked in the saint furnace's infernal energy. His face flushed red as if he were drunk, and he quickly closed his eyes to refine it. A cold infernal energy rose up from his body. From time to time, human faces would form and hell before exploding apart. This repeated over and over again, causing one to feel a chill in their hearts. Qin Yu put away the fleeting flame furnace and carefully looked over it. Although he wasn't sure what law formula Shan Wugu cultivated, it was clear that it was a path to refine the infernal energy for his own use. This sort of cultivation method often progressed at a godly speed and was incredibly powerful. But the drawbacks were equally serious, not to mention the terrifying might of heavenly tribulation in refining the infernal energy. But after cultivating it to a high level, the infernal energy would have an effect on a cultivator's mind. It was likely to create a zombie that would lose all reason and only know how to kill. After hesitating for a moment, Qin Yu's eyes darkened. He decided that once Shan Wugu woke up, he would have a serious discussion with him. He could step into the demonic path, but he had to change his cultivation law formula. Although he didn't have a top demonic art, he had plenty of top quality goods. If he really couldn't find one, he would have to find a way to obtain a better one. Fortunately, his brother from the past was still alive. No matter what, Qin Yu couldn't stare on helplessly as he walked into a dead end. Shan Wugu quickly refined the infernal energy within the Saint Furnace. His eyes shined with a brilliant light. It was clear he had obtained a great harvest. Qin Yu's heart sank. In this sort of situation, it would be extremely difficult to persuade him to give up. Qin Yu, the infernal energy within the Saint Furnace is far more effective than I imagined. If I refine it a bit more, I might be able to make a breakthrough in my cultivation. Shan Wugu excitedly said. Sensing Qin Yu's complexion, he asked, "What is it?" Qin Yu said in a low voice, "Potato, I hope that you can give up the cultivation method you are currently cultivating." Shan Wugu frowned. Infernal energy lingered between his eyebrows. After several breaths of silence, he said, "Qin Yu, I know what you are worried about, but the only reason I have my current cultivation is because of this cultivation method. It is impossible for me to give up on it." He paused for a moment and then pretended to be relaxed. "Don't worry, I have a sense of propriety. I won't let the infernal energy invade my mind. Potato, the demonic path's cultivation methods are as vast as the sea. Why walk the path of refining infernal energy? I can help you. Qin Yu, as a righteous path cultivator, you actually have such a terrifying demonic nature in your body. I have never asked why, so don't interfere in my matters. I am different from you. I am also different from you." Chapter 121. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go. Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Looking at his firm expression, Qin Yu suddenly realized that the Shan Wugu of today was no longer the Lang Tu of the past. He had his own ideas, his own judgment. Love, go, small, say, Netku. After a moment of silence, he calmly said, "Potato, I only hope that you won't regret it in the future." Shan Wugu squeezed out a smile. Qin Yu took a deep breath. "I have already obtained the 5-element spiritual objects. You can take the Saint Furnace with you. I wish you all the best, and I hope that you can truly obtain the status of the demonic path Saint Sun." He clasped his hands together and turned around to leave. Shan Wugu's lips moved, but in the end he didn't urge him to stay. After a brief daze, his eyes brightened once more. His aptitude was ordinary. Apart from being patient, there was nothing special about him. If he wanted to be able to shake the world, the demonic fiend was his only choice. Therefore, no matter what, even if he knew that it was dangerous, he would not give up. "Brother, I know you mean well. I'm sorry." Shan Wugu opened his mouth and sucked in a deep breath of infernal energy. After today, he didn't know when he would have the chance to touch the Saint Furnace again. He had to do everything in his power to refine it and take another step in his cultivation. He left the cave and sealed the entrance. Qin Yu frowned. He had already fulfilled his responsibility as a brother. If Shan Wugu couldn't accept this, then that was his own choice. In the end, they were no longer the two youths of the Eastern Mountain sect. With their current cultivation and status, they had to be responsible for their own decisions. Shua! With a flash of light, Qin Yu rapidly flew far away. On the blood-red island, the atmosphere was gloomy. What sort of grievous crime was losing the Saint Furnace? Once the demon monarch's wrath descended, most of the people here would be burnt to ashes. Suddenly, billowing demonic energy rose up from the ground where the Saint Furnace had been, condensing into a demonic array formation. Demonic light soared into the sky, and a figure appeared. His eyes were like soundless thunder, exploding in the hearts of all the demonic cultivators. "We pay our respects to the sage." Everyone on the island knelt on the ground, their expressions fearful. Sang Yun paled. He struggled to kneel down, letting his wounds open and sweat dripping down his face. The sage's face was indistinct, and his entire body was floating with demonic light. His body wasn't imposing, but his aura was like a million mountains. Valiant, overbearing, disdainful, it swept through the heavens and the earth, causing others to find it difficult to breathe. With a glance, Sang Yun's chest exploded. Flesh and blood splashed everywhere, revealing his beating heart. Love, Gope, small, say, Netku, holy monarch, spare my life. Song Yun begged pitifully. A demonic light flashed, and the sage disappeared in front of everyone. His ice-cold voice reverberated. I'm very disappointed. Puff, puff. The heads of all the fiendish cultivators on the ground exploded, red and white splattering everywhere. Besides Tsang Yun and Han Shanai, all the demon cultivators of his force were dead. Northgate Demon's forehead touched the ground, his body stiff and his face pale. If the Saint Lord hadn't attacked them, that meant he was well aware of what was happening in the sea region. If so, would Shan Wugu's actions also be discovered? If that was the case, then their fates would probably be 100 times more miserable than these people. With the 5-element spiritual objects in hand, his harvests in the sea region had far surpassed his expectations. He didn't want to experience any more twists and turns. All he needed to do was find a place and wait for the Netherworld ship to arrive. But at this time, Chinyu froze. His heart felt as if it were being grasped by a giant hand. Every beat brought with it a stabbing pain. Cold sweat seeped out of his forehead, quickly drenching his black robe. He did not know what had happened, but his intuition told him that danger was approaching. This feeling, Demon Monarch. Qin Yu's complexion changed. His first thought was to immediately run away as far as possible. Although he had managed to force the Demon Lord's demonic face to retreat, he had gained an even clearer understanding of the Demon Lord's terror. If the Demon Lord truly descended, he would have no chance of survival. No, the Demon Monarch must have come for the Saint Furnace. If he discovered what Shan Wugu was doing then, he would undoubtedly die. Blood-red flames ignited and Qin Yu turned and left. With all his might, the underwater mountain range soon appeared before him. With a flick of his sleeve, he opened the entrance and charged in. Shan Wugu had reached a critical juncture in refining the infernal energy. His eyes shot open, bewildered. In his mind, a terrifying aura was like the edge of a blade, threatening to tear apart his soul. The Demon Monarch was about to arrive. Qin Yu didn't have time to say anything. With a flick of his sleeves, he put away the Saint Furnace and rushed out of the cave. Love, Gobe, small, say, neck kabang, the seawater split apart. Qin Yu shot into the skies, howling away like a blood-red meteor. Within the cave, Shan Wugu's complexion was pale, and he was sweating profusely. It was clear that the process of refining the infernal energy had been effected. At this time, a self-deprecating smile appeared on his face. If he left then, he left. At the very least, he didn't kill him. At least, he could still retain some of their friendship from the past. However, when you urged me to give up on the infernal energy refinement technique, did you already decide to take away the Saint Furnace? Between the sea and the sky, a blood-red beam of light tore through the air. Qin Yu didn't know that he had been misunderstood by Shan Wugu and was crazily fleeing. As time passed, the fear in his heart didn't disappear. Rather, it became increasingly strong. He knew that he had been locked onto by the Demon Monarch. Suddenly, Qin Yu looked up. At some unknown time, the dim skies above had turned pitch black and stars began to appear in the sky. Silver starlight gathered in the skies. Then a figure stepped out from this starlight. Without releasing the least bit of aura, Qin Yu froze where he was. Fear gushed out from the depths of his soul. The Demon Monarch had arrived. It's you. The voice was a bit surprised. Little friend, you and I are truly fated. As the light voice fell into Qin Yu's ears, it was no less than a thunderclap. Billowing waves of sound crashed into his soul. He spat out several mouthfuls of blood. His complexion paled and his magic power froze. In the Netherworld sea region, night fell and the sea of stars condensed. Qin Yu froze in midair, blood gushing out from his nose and mouth. His complexion was deathly pale and he was in an extremely distressed state. At this time, even with his intelligence, all his hopes had turned to dust. Perhaps he might be able to contend with an ordinary nascent soul. But this was the demonic Path Saint Lord, the most formidable existence in the world. How could he possibly contend with him? Who? Strong winds whipped up between the heavens and earth. A giant bone hand appeared, grasping towards him like an ancient divinity or demon god that crossed through space and time. Qin Yu tried his best to struggle, but all he did was cause the magic power in his body to surge, and he spat out several mouthfuls of blood. He could only watch helplessly on as the giant hand fell towards him, helpless like an ant. Just as the bone hand was about to fall, there was a loud roar from the sea. The endless sea began to tumble and tumble. A great wave appeared. It was so high that it gave off a feeling as if the heavens and earth would shatter. Before it even arrived, one could feel the terrifying strength contained within every drop of seawater. Even with the demon body strength, it would still be crushed to powder the moment it touched it. Qin Yu closed his eyes and sighed inwardly. Up until now, he had experienced far too many life and death situations. He had already expected that death would arrive, but he never thought it would be so close to him. With the 5-element spiritual objects in hand, he would be able to cultivate the 5-element sword diagram. His bright road of cultivation would slowly unfold, but the moment it bloomed, he would instantly fall into darkness. Indeed, fate made fools of people. The affairs of the world were unpredictable. Whoosh! The sound of water rang out in his ears. He could feel the moisture contained within the water as well as the terrifying strength contained within. Suddenly, the imprisonment around him shattered and a cold voice echoed out. "Junior, the favor of saving my clan's princess is written off. Whether or not you can survive will depend on your luck." Qin Yu's eyes shot open. He saw the great wave pass through him and collide with the bone hand. At this moment, because space seemed unable to withstand the impact of such a terrifying strength, it violently twisted. Qin Yu felt a stabbing pain in his eyes. He couldn't help but close them, tears flowing down his cheeks. Then he felt as if he had become a tiny speck of sand wrapped up in a rushing river, a tiny speck of sand that could be ignored. Wildly tumbling and shaking, the formidable strength nearly flattened him and tore him apart. Countless wounds tore open on his body, and blood gushed out from his head. Qin Yu bitterly smiled. He finally understood why that voice had said that whether or not he could survive would depend on his luck. Indeed, just because he didn't die just now didn't mean he wouldn't die in the future. This was a cruel and sorrowful fact. He took a deep breath. A stabbing pain spread out from within his chest. Broken bones pierced into his flesh, and every breath he took felt a burning pain. His lungs should have been punctured, and every breath he took was filled with the smell of blood. His heart raced. Even if he knew this would accelerate the loss of blood, he couldn't care about anything else. This was because this was the only way he could stimulate the strength of the demon body and obtain a slim chance of survival. Otherwise, if he stayed on this terrifying battlefield, all that awaited him was death. Qin Yu tightly closed his eyes. He was worried that if he opened them, his eyes would be crushed by the wild strength. He stepped forwards. This step landed on the waves. The usually gentle water current was now 100 times harder than steel. With a loud cracking sound, Qin Yu's foot broke apart and he rushed out. Before he collapsed, he had to escape the battlefield. Bang, bang, heaven-shaking explosions rang out without end, each time setting off a heaven-shaking impact. Wild strength swept across the sea surface, stirring up endless amounts of seawater that blocked out the skies. Qin Yu was like an ant, struggling to survive beneath the might of the heavens. His complexion became increasingly pale, and the rate at which his wounds bled slowed down. His flesh and blood turned pale, as if all the blood in his body was about to run out. Every drop of seawater contained a terrifying strength. As it fell on his body, it was no less than a hammer striking him. His flesh and blood, his bones, all of them trembled and groaned. Waves of pain ravaged his body, wanting to swallow up Qin Yu's mind. but the firmness on his face never disappeared. Facing the demon monarch, Qin Yu was as weak as a baby. He didn't have the strength to resist. He could only close his eyes and wait for death. But now there were powerhouses of the sea races helping him, giving him a slim chance of survival. No matter how slim it was, he had to give it his all. Perhaps there would come a day when he would die, but not now. Today he had to live. Qin Yu roared out like a wild beast from deep in his throat. He used the last of his strength to use the blood escape art. Blood-red light erupted, tearing through the waves. It was unknown how many times the blood-red light was struck. But just as it was about to collapse, the terrifying crushing pressure suddenly vanished. He had broken out. Qin Yu staggered. He had become several times thinner, almost as if he were a bag of bones. This was the terrifying loss of blood from forcefully using the blood escape art. His black robes hung on his body in tatters. His chest heaved up and down, as if he were on the verge of collapse. Qin Yu took out a pill and swallowed it. Then he bit down on the tip of his tongue and took advantage of this moment to fly far away. Behind him, the battle between the two super powerhouses continued. As time passed, the range of the shock waves continued to expand. The surrounding sea region for hundreds of miles was like a storm, killing countless sea creatures. Qin Yu aimlessly flew forwards. He no longer had any thoughts of determining which direction to go in. His only thought was to get as far away from here as possible. After flying for an unknown period of time, he spat out a mouthful of blood. His injuries had reached the limit. If he didn't stop now, he really would die. With a flick of his sleeves, the 1,000-craft house appeared. Qin Yu landed on it and swallowed down a pill. Then he used the last of his strength to release the yin-yang twin ants, and his consciousness fell into darkness. Chapter 122. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. The seawater surged and roared. Its terrifying power could crush everything, and its momentum was earth-shattering. But in the center of the storm, it was strangely quiet. Two figures faced each other from afar, both emitting a monstrous aura. The demon lord had a calm expression, his face devoid of anger. He stood with his hands held behind his back, exuding the bearing of a grandmaster. He indifferently said, "This lord has no intention of becoming enemies with the sea race. Why must Sir stop me?" A wild strength caused space to distort. All that could be seen was a thin figure. Recently, many sea folk have gone missing. Her Highness the Princess of my people is investigating, and she was nearly killed by a demonic path cultivator. Is this what the demon monarch meant when he said he had no intention of becoming enemies with my sea folk? The demon monarch said, "This matter is the fault of the demonic path cultivators. This monarch will definitely give the sea races an explanation. But this junior took my precious treasure, so I must take it back." The skinny figure shook his head. "He saved my clan's princess." The demon monarch frowned. It seems that teacher has decided to intervene. He took a step forward and shouted, "Please!" Bang! The tranquility at the core of the storm was instantly shattered. A terrifying power surged, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. After a moment, the demon lord's voice rang out. "Mr. truly is powerful. This lord has experienced it. In the future, if there is such a day, I ask that Mr. come to the mainland. This lord will definitely prepare for you." The entire storm suddenly split into two. The demon monarch stepped out, a few tattered pieces of clothing flying through the air. Obviously, he'd suffered a slight loss in the battle with the mysterious expert of the sea demons. But even then, he was still calm and composed, and he fully displayed the demeanor of a peerless expert. Shwa! With a flash of demonic energy, the demon monarch disappeared. In the middle of the storm, the waves continued to surge. Vaguely, a huge figure could be seen standing there, towering like a mountain. After an unknown period of time, Qin Yu finally managed to open his eyes. This simple movement left him gasping for breath. Love, go, small, say, Nekkuit wasn't that he was so weak that he couldn't even open his eyelids. It was just that his face was covered in a thick layer of scabs, and he couldn't move his arms. It wasn't easy for him to open his eyes. The sky was dark and the light was extremely dim. Fortunately, it didn't hurt. His eyes were already red from the pressure. His pupils constricted a few times, and after a blur, he could finally see his surroundings clearly. Wang. Sensing that its master had woken up, the Ant King flew over to express its closeness and condolences. Its entire body was covered in blood, and its transparent wings were damaged. It was clear that it had experienced a bitter battle. However, the ant swarm was full of vigor and did not become dispirited because of the slaughter. Instead, it became even more ferocious. Qin, you barely managed to move his lips. You've worked hard. The originally beautiful 1,000-craft house had been mostly destroyed. All that was left over was the foundation that supported him on the sea. Every inch of the room was soaked in blood. Occasionally, one could see some severed limbs of sea monsters. Every inch was blood. Every corner. Every corner. Qin Yu's lips twitched. Don't worry. Since I'm awake, I won't die. Ant King, continue to guard. I still need some time. After struggling for a long time and sweating profusely from the pain, he finally took out the pill and swallowed it. Although he felt and he felt. And after he. Cold chin, he chin, and someone and. His sweat. God. And. He closed his eyes. Although he was exhausted to the point of death and his mind ached, he still managed to maintain a clear mind. The smell of blood was the most sensitive signal to these ruthless and savage sea demons. The fragments of the 1,000-craft house, which were soaked in blood and floating on the surface of the sea, attracted their endless hostility. The slaughter never stopped. The Yin-Yang twin ants revealed their terrifying strength after advancing. If it weren't for the fact that the water wasn't suitable for them to fight, the sea monsters wouldn't be able to approach Qin Yu before they were torn to pieces. After swallowing a massive amount of flesh and blood, a line of blood appeared between the black and white parts of the Yin-Yang twin ants. Their aura became increasingly violent. On the 4th day, Qin Yu opened his eyes. His bones emitted loud crackling sounds. His injuries were still far from being healed, but he still had the strength to protect himself. Today, he could be said to have been thoroughly revived. He took out a great sun mulberry leaf to reward the ant swarm. Qin Yu discovered that there were bloodlines on the Yin-Yang twin ants. Luckily, they didn't affect his control. The temptation of the great sun mulberry was still irresistible, and he felt a little more at ease. However, he would have to pay more attention to what these bloodlines were in the future. He looked up to determine his position and then took out a sea map of the Netherworld Sea region. But he had been randomly flying around and had been drifting with the waves for the past several days, so it was hard to determine his position. Thinking about it, Qin Yu stood up. With a thought, the swarm of ants flew to his feet, lifting him up as they rapidly flew into the distance. He couldn't stay in the 1,000-craft house fragment any longer. Luckily, although he couldn't ride the Yin-Yang twin ants, it was still simple for them to carry him. But soon, Qin Yu ordered the ant swarm to stop. He looked into the distance. The distant horizon was also gray, but the color seemed to have deepened. He turned his hand, and the wind-listening shell appeared. He poured magic power into it and placed it near his ears. After several breaths of time, his pupils shrank. Hum! Hum! The ant swarm flapped their wings and burst away in the opposite direction. In the distance, that deep black color was rapidly spreading over. One could hear muffled rumbling sounds, like the roar of a giant beast. The Yin-Yang 2 ants were extremely anxious. It was obvious that they had already sensed a dangerous aura. Qin Yu bitterly smiled. This was a sea storm, and moreover, it was occurring in the most terrifying Netherworld Sea region. If a golden core cultivator was a bit more cautious in an ordinary sea storm, then they would be fine. But in the Netherworld Sea region, if a nascent soul cultivator was unlucky, they might also perish here. The Ant King screamed, urging the ant swarm to fly as fast as they could. But this storm was ridiculously fast. In just a moment, it had already caught up. Looking back, he saw that the black seawater had been drawn into the air, forming an earth-shattering wall of water that rumbled as it rushed forward. Tornadoes constantly appeared, sucking in a massive amount of seawater. They spiraled into the skies like vicious dragons, wreaking havoc. Black clouds pressed down to the extreme, nearly connecting with the wall of water. Thunder roared, and arcs of lightning extended into the sea along the wall of water. Qin Yu's senses far surpassed that of an ordinary person's. He could clearly see that within the wall of water there were several bloody sea monsters that were violently twitching in the arcs of lightning. Then they turned into black charcoal that was crushed into powder. His complexion paled. This wasn't fear, but his slow-beating heart began to accelerate. The blood in his body began to flow faster and faster. With a flick of his sleeves, he received the ant swarm into the Imperial Spirit Bag. Blood flames ignited, and Qin Yu used the blood escape art without hesitation. Perhaps this would cause the injuries that he had just recovered to erupt once more, making them even more terrifying. But compared to falling into the storm, Qin Yu had no other choice. Strong winds blew against his face. As his speed rose, his line of sight stretched out. But in the boundless sea region, where the surrounding environment didn't change at all, everything seemed strangely slow. In this state, Qin Yu could clearly feel every minute change occurring within his mortal body. There was a light, cracking sound in his chest. The bones that had just grown back together were squeezed and crushed apart. The rough edges cut through his flesh and blood. The edges cut through his lungs, leaving behind a dark red line of blood. As he gasped for breath, blood began to seep out. The smell of blood lingered in his nose and mouth, and every breath he took brought with it a burning sensation. His wildly beating heart was still strong, but every time it contracted and expanded, it began to slow down. Although it wasn't obvious, it caused a magic power within his body to slow down. The previously healed wounds on his body began to split open once more. Blood flowed out from the corners of his eyes, his eyebrows, his arms, his thighs, wetting his tattered robes. The blood that stuck to his body rapidly turned cold, turning into blood-red shards of ice that were swept away in the next moment. With his severely wounded mortal body, it was impossible for him to continue using the blood escape art for a long period of time. Qin Yu was well aware of this. He only tried his best to last until he escaped the range of the storm. But as time passed, the storm was thrown far behind. Even so, it was still boundless, and he couldn't find the edge of it. If he continued like this, his mortal body would collapse before the storm arrived, and he would die. Qin Yu sighed inwardly and came to a sudden stop. The blood-red light faded away to reveal a pale face. His slightly recovered mortal body was even thinner than before. Since he couldn't avoid it, there was no need to run. Of course, he wasn't waiting for death, but seeking survival in a hopeless situation. Qin Yu sat down cross-legged. With a thought, light erupted around him and nearly 100 talismans covered him. After doing this, he thought for a moment. He turned his left hand and took out the 100 nether sword, and his right hand took out the copper mirror. These two were the strongest magic tools he had. Although one was sleeping and the other hadn't recognized him as its master, in this life or death crisis, Qin Yu couldn't care too much about such things. Either he could help him survive, or they could be buried in the storm together, forever sinking to the bottom of the sea. Rumble, rumble, the sound waves shook the heavens and earth. From afar, one could only see black clouds and walls of water connecting together. Water tornadoes soared into the heavens and thunder roared. It was only from up close that one could truly feel just how terrifying the Netherworld sea region storm was. This was a true majesty that came from the heavens and earth. Everything that blocked its path was as small as an ant, leaving behind only destruction and despair. Qin Yu took a deep breath. Like a great stone, he sank to the bottom of the sea. In the next moment, the surrounding seawater began to boil. Every drop of water trembled, releasing endless energy. Hum! Hum! All of the talismans around Qin Yu lit up at the same time, resisting the pressure of the seawater. Even so, he stuffily coughed and spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire person wildly tumbled in the boiling seawater. He couldn't distinguish north from south, up from down, left from right. Compared to the storm that had been stirred up by the demon monarch and the sea monsters, this was 3 times more terrifying. Kacha! Kacha! Starting from the periphery, the talismans began to break apart. Bit by bit, they began to disintegrate, becoming faster and faster. Suddenly, the surrounding pressure vanished. Everything in front of him brightened. It was Qin Yu's figure being sucked out of the seawater and sucked into the wall of water. Rumble, 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 rumble. He was like a plank on the crest of a wave, able to be torn to pieces at any moment. Whoosh! A waterspout rose into the air. From the moment it drilled out to the moment it formed, only several breaths of time had passed. Before Qin Yu could respond, he was pulled out of the wall of water. Pipa! Pipa! The talismans rapidly collapsed. The tearing strength exerted on Qin Yu's body tore open his wounds, revealing the bones underneath. Blood dyed his entire body red, flowing down his arms to his palms and soaking his 2 treasures. He lowered his head, his face fierce and ruthless. If you don't do anything, then you will follow me to eternal damnation. Hashtag, 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 hashtag it had been published. Nearly 400,000 words had been released to the public. He hoped that everyone would be satisfied and that they could give Steamed Bun their genuine support. He bowed in thanks. Chapter 123. Genius in a second, remember love go. Speak Net to provide you with wonderful novels to read. Bang! The copper mirror trembled. Blue divine light gushed out, covering Qin Yu like water. In that instant, all of the talismans had shattered. If he had been even a moment slower, the strength of the waterspout would have been enough to tear him apart. The blue divine light condensed into a bubble, allowing the waterspout to suck it away. As it wildly spun around, the feeling of being trapped within could be imagined. Qin Yu didn't believe that the copper mirror that could resist the waterspout wouldn't have a way to eliminate this terrifying spinning. Perhaps the more likely possibility was that it still held hostility towards Qin Yu. Although it couldn't attack him right now, it still hoped to borrow the power of the waterspout to make him suffer. Qin Yu clenched his teeth. He made up his mind that he would subdue the copper mirror in the future and then let it know just how terrifying a man with a grudge was. As the black clouds tumbled, a bolt of thunder came crashing down. The entire waterspout sparkled with lightning. The blue divine light violently fluctuated. It was clear that the power of thunder had caused great damage to it. More and more marks appeared on the surface of the copper mirror. The blurry surface of the mirror became increasingly dim. It seemed that if it was struck by thunder again, it wouldn't be able to withstand it. Qin Yu roared, "If you don't want to be destroyed here, then stop spinning." The blue divine light paused for a moment. Then it began to spin in the opposite direction, counteracting the spinning strength of the waterspout. Qin Yu took a deep breath and stood up. His complexion darkened as he looked around. Bang! From the black clouds, a bolt of lightning fell down. Qin Yu fiercely attacked. He ruthlessly threw out a bamboo branch that flashed with lightning. Under the attraction of thunder and lightning, the lightning that rushed towards the waterspout changed directions and smashed into the bamboo branch. It was useful. Qin Yu's spirits rose. Although using the sky thunder bamboo like this was an act that deserved to be struck by lightning in the face of life or death, everything else had to be put aside. Moreover, as long as he was alive, even if the entire sky thunder bamboo was destroyed, as long as the rhizome existed, he could rely on the little blue lamp to grow it back in a short period of time. Something was wrong. Qin Yu frowned. He felt as if he had forgotten something. After being injured and losing blood, even the speed at which his brain worked seemed to slow down. Suddenly, Qin Yu clapped his hands, cursing himself for being an idiot. What was there to be afraid of? The little blue lamp seemed to be very interested in thunder. Although the storm of thunder wasn't heavenly tribulation, it wasn't much weaker than heavenly tribulation. Shua, the little blue lamp appeared. Perhaps it was an illusion, but the moment it appeared in this world, the black clouds above its head seemed to stop moving for a moment. Then, countless thunderbolts exploded at the same time. The lightning spread wantonly, surging with a terrifying aura that made people despair. Bang, bang, hundreds and thousands of lightning bolts descended, bombarding the waterspout. The copper mirror violently trembled. Qin Yu could feel its anger and fear. If it could speak, the copper mirror would definitely be cursing out loud. Bastard, what did you take out? It's fine if you want to die, but why did you drag me into it? Such a dense barrage of lightning wasn't something that the copper mirror could withstand. In an instant, it would turn Qin Yu into charcoal. However, his expression was still calm, and his eyes were surging with great confidence. This was because the little blue lamp had never disappointed him. The descending lightning struck the waterspout almost at the same time. The terrifying lightning spread out, and all the seawater was instantly evaporated. The waterspout had transformed into a lightning tornado. Qin Yu's hair was charred and his black robes were withered. The black sword moved imperceptibly for a moment before falling silent once more. As the copper mirror cursed in fear, the little blue lamp suddenly flashed with light. Its thumb-sized body instantly turned into a black hole, releasing a terrifying swallowing strength. The power of thunder that formed the waterspout was directly sucked out of shape. The thunder was like a raging river, instantly sucked away. At this moment, even the terrifying tsunami of the Netherworld Sea region seemed insignificant compared to the little blue lamp. The little blue lamp wasn't satisfied with just one lightning tornado. It broke free and shot into the skies, shooting into the tumbling black clouds above. No one knew what had happened, but after that, not a single bolt of lightning flashed. Then the black clouds began to flee. It split into countless pieces in fear and rapidly vanished from sight, revealing the gray skies above the Netherworld Sea region. After the black clouds dispersed, the raging storm seemed to have lost its source of strength. The strong winds gradually weakened and the wall of water fell lower and lower. Finally, it couldn't hold on any longer and crashed down. A blue divine light drilled out from beneath the seawater. Qin Yu frowned, his complexion ugly to the extreme. At this time, there was the sound of breaking air. The copper mirror hurriedly scattered its light, allowing it to fly near. It was the little blue lamp. Compared to before, it hadn't changed at all. Qin Yu revealed a happy expression. He took it in his hand, his taut heart relaxing a little. The little blue lamp was the foundation of his life. He absolutely could not lose it. He looked up and saw that the sea region had gradually calmed down. Qin Yu took a deep breath and suppressed his urge to curse. First, the demon monarch had chased him down, and he had desperately escaped the battlefield of two super powerhouses. Then, just as he caught his breath, a storm arrived and he nearly died in the sea. His luck was simply terrible, but what Qin Yu didn't know was that his bad luck hadn't ended just yet. This was because deep in the sea, a giant head was staring at him with a single eye, a cold light flashing in its eyes. The Nine Nether Winding Path was originally one of the safest places in the Netherworld Sea region. But, as luck would have it, this storm just happened to pass through that place. The tumor had an extremely keen sense for danger. It had escaped ahead of time and relied on its powerful body to move deep in the sea, avoiding the storm's attack. It was originally prepared to wait for the storm to pass before leaving, but it sensed the aura of that human cultivator. After hesitating again and again, it chased after the storm until it finally found his figure. Then the tumor saw something that it had never imagined in its life. The storm of thunder was a terrifying strength that could annihilate a nascent soul, but it was actually cleanly swallowed up by a thumb-sized lantern. It didn't know what this lantern was, but its instincts told it that as long as it could obtain this lantern, it could change its destiny. An unstoppable desire overwhelmed its hesitation and fear. The tumor decided to attack. The seawater suddenly caved in, forming a straight and bottomless hole that led straight to the seabed. Qin Yu's heart shrank. Without enough time to dodge, he was caught up in an invisible strength and pulled in. Above his head, the seawater rapidly closed up like a cage closing. It rapidly sank down at an unimaginable speed. Soon, the faint light in the sea vanished and the surrounding pitch-black darkness disappeared. Qin Yu was enraged. He struggled with all his strength, but he couldn't break free. He could only sink deeper and deeper into the darkness. After an unknown period of time, the imprisoning strength suddenly vanished and the channel leading to the seabed collapsed. What followed was the terrifying pressure contained in the endless seawater. Qin Yu's eyes widened and blood rushed through his veins. His broken bones emitted loud cracking sounds and his organs shrank. Puff! Blood drilled out from his pores, instantly dyeing the seawater red. Blue divine light gushed out from the copper mirror, protecting Qin Yu. But in the blink of an eye, it began to tremble as if it would collapse. In the distance, the tumor quietly floated in the seawater. Every rune on its surface swelled up, causing it to expand over 10 times over in order to resist the pressure from the seawater. Although it had attacked, its cautious nature caused it to choose the safest method, to borrow the sea to kill someone. In a severely wounded and weakened state, this human cultivator simply couldn't escape. All it needed to do was wait for him to die and reap its harvest. Bang! There was a muffled sound beneath the sea. Seawater exploded, and the human cultivator rapidly floated up beneath the protection of the blue light. The tumor's single eye flashed with ridicule. It simply didn't know what sort of deep sea it was in. All of this was futile. Beneath its head, several thin tentacles gently swayed. The tumor quietly squeezed through the seawater, following far behind. Bang, bang, seawater exploded, pushing the blue divine light towards the surface. But even after a moment, the surroundings were still pitch black and the pressure of the seawater hadn't diminished much. The human cultivator was clearly impatient. The corner of the tumor's lips curled up. It was about time. And indeed, after persisting for a bit longer, the blue divine light rapidly dimmed. A flower of blood bloomed in the sea, dyeing the seawater red. The human cultivator floated in the sea like a piece of dead wood, motionless. The tumor thought for a moment and decided to wait a bit longer. The reason it was able to survive until now was largely due to its innate caution. But at this time, the faint smell of blood flowed along the seawater and reached its side. The tumor's single eye brightened and it opened its mouth to suck in the blood. Then, because of excitement, its body began to violently shiver. There's actually such a wonderful flesh and blood in this world. The strength contained within caused it to instinctively desire and tremble. The state of its mortal body had always been a source of pain in the depths of the tumor's heart. Even though it had today's strength, it spent most of its time hiding deep in the seabed, not easily revealing itself. Even though it was ugly and fierce, it still dreamed of a male god in its heart. Now, the chance for its dream to come true had finally appeared. With such a formidable flesh and blood strength, if it swallowed and absorbed it, it would definitely be able to break through its shackles and transform into a true body. At that time, with its strength, transforming into human form would be as easy as turning its hand. The tumor's single eye shined with an unprecedented heat. It hesitated for 2 breaths of time and finally couldn't suppress the excitement in its heart. Its tentacles swung towards the human cultivator. Along the way, it opened its mouth and absorbed the blood that fused into the seawater. This formidable flesh and blood strength left it excited to the extreme. Mine, mine, all of my flesh and blood is mine. It didn't want to wait for even a single breath of time, because this human cultivator was losing its own blood at every moment. Here he was. A wonderful meal was right in front of him. He was a young human man. Although he was thin to the point of being a bag of bones, one could still see his sharp edges. The tumor suddenly had a thought appear in its mind. Perhaps it could transform into this appearance in the future. Then, this thought completely occupied its mind. But before this, it needed to eat this human man first. Unfortunately, it didn't know his name. Otherwise, it could borrow his name. Name, perhaps I should seriously think of a name for myself. A name, I also need to have my own name. The tumor was stirred up once more. It opened its mouth wide, as if its entire body was composed of some sort of colloid. It swallowed up a massive amount of seawater and Qin Yu's body. The tumor wasn't worried that it would eat something it shouldn't eat. With its unique body, it could guarantee that it would absorb what it should absorb and discard what it should discard. The tumor didn't have any teeth in its mouth, but the esophagus that led to its abdomen was covered with sharp blades. As the flesh and blood wriggled, they crisscrossed with each other. Although they didn't touch, there was no doubt that they were sharp enough to grind apart anything that entered. As the seawater flowed into the esophagus, Qin Yu's eyes flashed open. He raised his hand and used all the strength in his body to thrust out the 100 nether sword. Hashtag, brothers and sisters. Please subscribe and support me. I am deeply grateful. Chapter 124. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go. Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Puff! It easily cut through flesh and blood. The entire sword blade sunk in. With such strength, even Qin Yu's sword-wielding palm drilled in. Love, go small, say, Netka warm blood drenched Qin Yu's body. Then, as his flesh was cut open, it suddenly tightened. Ka-cha! Ka-cha! In an instant, the bones of his hands and fingers were completely shattered. Qin Yu's face was deathly pale. He held on to the hilt of his sword, not allowing himself to fall into the crazily twisting esophagus. The tumor madly shook as it struggled in its death throes. Pained roars came from outside, and only after an hour did it gradually stop. His taut flesh softened and loosened. The blood that had stopped flowing gushed out like a fountain, drenching his entire body. As it fell into his wounds, it was directly absorbed. It was like his body was on fire. His exposed flesh and blood instantly turned red, like an iron ingot in a furnace. Water vapor rose from his body, and there was a faint red color on the water vapor, like a burning flame. Qin Yu fiercely opened his eyes. His pupils had turned crimson, overbearing and disdainful. They were cold and cruel, without the least bit of emotion. Disregarding the injury on his hand, he grabbed the 100 nether sword and tore open the wound. He used so much force that the broken bone pierced through his skin, revealing a few patches of deathly pale skin. His other hand grabbed the edge of the wound and forcefully tore it open. But, strangely, not a single drop of blood flowed out of the wound. Qin Yu remained expressionless. He pulled out the 100 nether sword that had sunk deep into his flesh. It trembled as if it were dissatisfied, but with a cold cough it instantly quietened down. Putting away the 100 nether sword, he pressed his hands against the wound and drilled his entire body into it. Letting out a comfortable sigh, the flesh on the wound wriggled and quickly healed. It was now impossible to tell that there was a cultivator hiding inside. In the depths of the sea, a huge sarcoma was suspended in the middle, and a few tentacles floated powerlessly in the sea. Some sea monsters had already discovered the powerful aura emanating from the corpse of their own kind, causing their eyes to turn red with desire. However, no matter how strong or weak they were, as long as they approached within 1,000 feet of the tumor, their bodies would stiffen and they would turn around and flee in a frenzy. It was as if there was a heaven-overflowing majesty pervading the air, causing them to be terrified and not dare to offend it. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, the sarcoma became more and more shriveled and shrunk several times, like a greedy parasite that was gorging itself. Half a month later, with a muffled sound, the thin layer of sarcoma-like skin was torn apart by a hand that stretched out from within. Qin Yu drilled out, his eyes dazed for a long time before they regained focus. Although he couldn't remember exactly what had happened, there were chaotic and blurry fragments in his mind. To plunder flesh and blood and take their essence for their own use. Was this the instinct of the demon body? After thinking for a long time, Qin Yu let out a long breath. In the end, he was still alive, and it felt quite good. His injuries had already healed. Every inch of his flesh and blood seemed to have been tempered by the flames of a furnace. He could clearly feel the boundless blood vitality within him. Just the slightest movement of his bones could erupt with a strength that could crush everything. Furthermore, even though he was deep beneath the sea, he didn't feel any pressure at all. It was clear that a heaven-shaking, earth-toppling transformation had occurred to his body. Lowering his head, he looked at the shriveled skin of the tumor. Even the strength contained within it had been completely plundered. It wasn't hard to imagine why such a change had occurred. At this time, the magic power within his body seemed to be frozen, sealed within his Dantian sea without the slightest fluctuation. Qin, you faintly felt that this wasn't a bad thing. After sensing it for a moment, he temporarily suppressed this thought. With a thought, all the pores on his body closed, and his aura was sealed within so that it couldn't be sensed by the outside world. And this was only on the surface. There seemed to be even more mysteries within his body. It was difficult to sense for a while, but perhaps he would have to slowly experience them in the future. Potato, he had lost the furnace, and the demon monarch hadn't caught him yet. He didn't know whether or not he would vent his anger on him. Qin Yu's heart tightened. He stepped forwards like a large fish, tearing through the seawater. Although he had lost all of his magic power by relying on his powerful mortal body, his speed was still astonishing. Along the way, the sea monsters he encountered would sense his aura from afar and flee in panic. At this time, in the eyes of the sea monsters, Qin Yu was an incomparably powerful being of the same species. This was because, after the demon body swallowed up the tumor, it automatically possessed its aura. Everything went smoothly. Half a day later, Qin Yu found a cave at the seabed. The entire cave entrance had been smashed apart, and Potato was nowhere to be seen. Focusing his senses, he could sense that there were still traces of terrifying demonic energy that hadn't scattered yet. Only the demon monarch could have done this for half a month. Potato should have been taken away by him. Qin Yu revealed a worried expression. His eyes darkened for a long time before he forcefully suppressed these thoughts. Thinking too much about it was useless. What he needed to do now was to refine the 5-element spiritual objects and cultivate the 5-element sword diagram. At that time, he might be able to fight a nascent soul cultivator. Then he could think of a way to inquire about Potato. Just as he was about to leave, Qin Yu stiffened. Although he immediately restored himself, he clearly couldn't hide it from those eyes in the dark. What keen senses! A light voice echoed out. A powerful divine sense swept out, overbearing and tyrannical, without the least bit of concealment. Instinctively, all of Qin Yu's pores shrank. He severed all connections with the outside world, becoming like a piece of dead wood or stone. The master of the divine sense cried out in surprise. As the seabed waters tumbled, a figure was revealed. It was an unimaginably massive turtle. Its eyes were the size of a grown man, and they cast a massive shadow over the sea. A sharp light flashed as it locked onto Qin Yu. "Junior, what a powerful aura-concealing technique. Even I am unable to investigate it." Qin Yu's thoughts raced. He bowed and said, "Greetings, Senior. I thank Senior for saving my life." This voice belonged to the mysterious sea monster powerhouse that had fought against the demon monarch and saved him. The large turtle lifted a claw. Although it seemed clumsy, its sharp claws shined with a cold light. Qin Yu didn't doubt that this person would only need to gently wave them to tear him to pieces. "Junior, Put away your aura-concealing technique. I want to see just who you are." The voice was light, but it wasn't a discussion. Qin Yu hesitated for a moment and then nodded. As if sensing his thoughts, the turtle's pores opened. But there seemed to be an invisible barrier between his flesh and blood that concealed the powerful fluctuations of blood energy. The turtle's claw fell between his eyebrows. It was hard and cold to the touch. Qin Yu stiffened. Luckily, after several breaths of time, the large turtle retracted its claw and looked at Qin Yu with pity in its eyes. It originally thought that this junior might be a spy from the demonic path, but it never imagined that he would be such an unlucky fellow. His cultivation had been completely wasted without even the tiniest bit remaining. That's right. Just how terrifying were the shock waves of his battle with the demon monarch. Even ordinary nascent souls would have to stay far away. Although this junior's cultivation wasn't weak, how could he be any better off in such a situation? He could already be considered lucky to have survived. However, after living for such a long time, it would never let down its guard. The large turtle narrowed its eyes and calmly said, "Junior, why did you appear here? And why did the demon monarch capture you?" Qin Yu respectfully said, reporting to Senior, "This junior joined forces with a friend to steal a treasure of the demonic path. When the demon monarch arrived, I took the demonic treasure and left, but my friend stayed here. Thanks to Senior's rescue, this junior was lucky enough to survive. I came back today to see how my friend is doing." As he spoke, he revealed a sad expression. Something had happened to Shan Wugu, so Qin Yu's expression was naturally flawless. The large turtle thought for a moment. Qin Yu's words weren't too different from what it had heard, so it should be true. Its eyes flashed. The demon monarch made such a big fuss, so I'm also curious. What sort of treasure did he lose? Qin Yu revealed just the right amount of bitterness. He took out the Saint Furnace, his heart perturbed. Luckily, the large turtle seemed to have high standards and wasn't interested in his storage ring. All of its attention was focused on the Saint Furnace. A light flashed in the giant turtle's eyes. Suddenly, the Saint Furnace hummed and the large turtle coughed, a dignified expression on its face. It stared at the Saint Furnace for a long time and then let out a long breath, a look of reluctance on its face. "It's fine. This thing has no fate with me. Since you stole it, you can keep it." As it spoke, it looked at Qin Yu with a strange look in its eyes. It was clear that it had noticed something about the Saint Furnace. Qin Yu's heart tightened, but he didn't reveal anything. He obediently put away the Saint Furnace. He certainly wanted to ask, but looking at the old turtle's appearance, it definitely wouldn't tell him. Now, it was best to think about how to leave. As he was thinking about how to leave, he didn't know that the large turtle in front of him was also thinking about how to arrange things for him. To be able to directly confront the demon monarch and even slightly gain the upper hand, even with the advantage of being in the sea region, one could imagine just how powerful the large turtle was. This turtle was naturally no ordinary turtle. In truth, its status within the sea races was astonishingly high. Appearing in the Netherworld sea region and coincidentally saving Qin Yu wasn't a coincidence. Rather, it had been entrusted by someone else. Although there was a reason for this, no matter how one looked at it, this matter couldn't be considered a beautiful one. If this boy was left alone in a place like the Netherworld sea region, he wouldn't be able to live past today. He would become the flesh and blood of a mutated sea monster. Thinking about it carefully, it was the sea races who had misunderstood him at the start. Although this boy had caused the sea races to lose some face, he still kept his word and released that little girl Lushy. Afterwards, he even saved her from the hands of the demonic path. Although he had fallen to his current situation because of himself, he couldn't escape the responsibility of the sea races. In addition, even though this boy surnamed Qin had been severely wounded and his cultivation crippled, he still didn't forget about his friends and risked his life to check on them. It could be said that he was one of the few humans that had a sense of camaraderie. Of course, the most important thing was that he had actually managed to make it here alive. This silly boy's luck was heaven-defying. Whatever, he had come up with so many reasons because he wanted to save his life. As expected, old turtles tended to be soft-hearted. If he were in his younger days, he would have swallowed up any human cultivator and treated him as a snack before or after a meal. The large turtle smacked its lips, as if it were reminiscing something. Inexplicably, Chinyu's forehead was covered in a cold sweat. "Senior!" The large turtle glared at him with dissatisfaction. It was a bit annoyed that Chinyu had interrupted its beautiful memories of delicious food. But as it thought about how Chinyu was a human, it felt a bit awkward. It coughed and said, "Boy, I will consider this as me being kind and saving your life." Chin, you didn't even have time to say a single word before he was wrapped up by the current and pulled onto the back of the turtle. The large turtle didn't seem to use any strength, but its limbs slowly moved and its massive body pushed through the seawater. Its speed was shockingly fast, causing billowing undercurrents to appear on the seabed. This feeling wasn't that it was paddling forward, but that the seawater was pushing it forward on its own initiative. This simple move had revealed the tyrannical methods of this old turtle. No wonder it had been able to fight the demon monarch in the sea region and hadn't suffered a loss at all. Chin was tightly bound by the seawater. His eyes widened, wanting to cry, but no tears came out. Just what was going on? He was perfectly fine, so why would he need anyone to save him? His thoughts raced. After several breaths of time, Chinyu sighed and closed his eyes. He had to accept his fate. There shouldn't be any danger for the time being. At worst, he would just have to find a chance to secretly escape. Chapter 125. Genius 1. Second, remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. The giant turtle was astonishingly fast. Along the way, it didn't even encounter a single fish, let alone a mutated sea demon. In the sea region, this old turtle was definitely at the level of an ancestor. His aura spread out like the arrival of the sun, and no one dared to provoke him. After an unknown period of time, there was a sudden sound of water, and seawater slid down from his body. Chinyu opened his eyes and saw a vast fog in front of him. He knew that he had arrived at the edge of the Netherworld sea region. But without the Netherworld ship, how could they leave? Soon, the large turtle allowed Chinyu to understand what it meant to be incomparably powerful. It opened its mouth, took a deep breath, and exhaled forcefully. Rumble! In an instant, the weather changed, and the sound was deafening. The mist that covered the sky and made it difficult to tell which direction it was going was directly blown out, leaving a straight path. Along the passageway, the big turtle leisurely flew out, very satisfied. Behind him, deep in the Netherworld sea region, a terrifying eyeball was staring at them. It hesitated again and again before finally choosing to leave. The great turtle suddenly accelerated, flying out of the range of the fog in the blink of an eye. It fiercely turned its head. "Brat, what did you do to actually draw that thing here?" Chinyu was confused. "What does senior mean?" The great turtle sneered. "You brat, stop pretending to be stupid. Don't test my patience, or I'll throw you back." Chinyu wryly smiled. Listening to Senior's words, it seems that Junior has provoked some fierce existence in the Netherworld sea region. But do you think that with Junior's cultivation I can accomplish this? Big Turtle frowned slightly. That was true. If he really provoked that thing, even if this kid had 8 lives, it wouldn't be enough to kill him. Moreover, he was completely useless now, so he was even more worthless. Its expression became more and more unsightly. After a long time, it coldly snorted. Since they weren't targeting this brat, then they were targeting him? It had been a few years since they had met, but his appetite had grown. All right, this old tortoise will remember this matter. We'll slowly settle the score in the future. Chinyu behaved himself and pretended that he didn't sense the evil aura emanating from the large turtle. But he was actually muttering to himself. Although he hadn't done anything, his instincts told him that the thing the large turtle spoke of was coming for him. Demonic Path St. Furnace? Or was it a tumor? in the Netherworld Sea region. These were the only two things that Chinyu had done. After thinking for a moment, he suppressed these thoughts. Since he had escaped, at worst he wouldn't come here again. The large turtle had a sullen expression as it hurried along. Chin, you certainly wouldn't go looking for trouble by talking too much, so he sped along. 10 days later, the turtle slowed down and dove into the depths of the sea. Chinyu opened his eyes, a sharp light flashing within them. Soon his eyes widened and his face was filled with shock. Resplendent radiance illuminated the dark sea region. It was some type of enormous coral that grew at the bottom of the sea like an ancient tree. It released a gentle radiance. At the center of the coral reefs was a city that only existed in legends, an undersea city. It lay on the seabed, shimmering with a myriad of colors. It was 100 times larger than any city Chinyu had ever seen. This Wu sect city. Chinsei, C-A-S-C. By He of King, C of Sunday. The style of the entire city was completely different. Most of the buildings were made of seabed sand, shells, and corals. They were not as square as the buildings of the human race. Instead, they had more of a casual, curvaceous beauty. A faint layer of light isolated the sea, but it didn't stop the sea folk from entering or leaving. Chin, you could clearly see several beautiful deep-sea carps waving their tails as they dove into the capital city. Then, they continued swimming around happily. After arriving here, the large turtle was in a much better mood. It turned to look at Chinyu's shocked expression and proudly said, "Brat, you humans aren't the only ones who can build cities. This is my sea race capital city, the eternal sun of the sea." Before the old turtle's giant body approached the capital city, it had already alarmed the capital city guards. They came out to greet him. The sea monster in the lead had taken human form. His body was strong to the point of being a mess. 2 snow-white fangs jutted out from his mouth, indicating that he was a high-level sea mammoth. His thick armor accentuated his extraordinary might. But in front of the old turtle, he was as docile as a sheep. He respectfully bowed. "Mr. Turtle, you've returned." Behind him was a group of rebellious capital city guards who had always been cold, arrogant, and belligerent. They lowered their heads, so low that they almost broke their necks. The old tortoise waved its claws casually. A beam of demonic light flashed, and a hunchback old man wearing a tortoise shell appeared in its place. His mustache combined with his thin body was a simple combination that vividly displayed the word wretched. Of course, no one dared to laugh. In fact, they didn't even dare to glance at him. All of the sea folk lowered their heads, their expressions as solemn and respectful as they could be. Chinyu endured it for a long time, but his lips still twitched. The old turtle ruthlessly glared at him, a thick threat in his eyes. Chinyu immediately understood why these sea folk were acting so well. Thinking about it, they had already been taught a lesson. "I'll find a place to settle this boy down." As the old turtle spoke, he flew into the capital city. This damn thing in the Netherworld Sea region actually dared to have ideas about him. This matter wasn't simple at all. He had to promptly inform His Majesty so that he could respond. The sea mammoth leader bowed. "Mister, please take care." When the old turtle vanished without a trace, he looked up and warmly smiled. "Little brother, my name is Mangli. What is your name?" To be able to sit in the position of commander of the capital city guards for so many years, he certainly had his outstanding points. Unlike his crude and clumsy appearance, he had an incomparably meticulous mind. Chin, you cupped his hands together. Ning Chin. If he said his real name, he feared that these people in front of him would immediately turn hostile. He casually swept his eyes around, wanting to leave immediately. But as he thought about how this was the sea race's capital city and how many powerhouses were gathered here, he could only suppress this tempting thought. Mangli sensed Chin use concealment, but didn't care. As long as he knew that this human in front of him was someone that Mr. Turtle had brought over, it didn't matter what his name was. but he had a familiar expression on his face. He patted Qin Yu's shoulder and said, "Come, I will personally lead you into the city." After giving several orders to his subordinates, Meng Li led Qin Yu into the capital city. They chatted happily, and the two of them had a pleasant time. Of course, Qin Yu didn't answer his questions in a roundabout way. Of course, the truth was that he didn't know why the old turtle had brought him here. Meng Li's smile didn't diminish. The more Qin Yu acted like this, the more he felt it was unusual, and his attitude became even more intimate. The interior of the sea race capital city was filled with flowers and flowers. Countless sea monsters walked or swam about. There were incomparably ugly fish monsters and dazzlingly beautiful mermaid girls. Sensing Qin Yu's surprise, he lowered his voice and said, "Those are the half-mermaid race. They are mostly women, and each one of them is incomparably beautiful. But what they excel at the most is how to please men." As he spoke, he gave Qin Yu a knowing look. "Brother Ning, if you need me, I can take you there at night. Trust me, this trip won't be in vain." Qin Yu revealed a bit of awkwardness, but also a bit of yearning. He hesitated for several breaths of time before shaking his head. "Forget it. This is my first time in the capital city, so it's best to be a bit more cautious." Since the sea mammoth leader wanted to curry favor with him, he didn't oppose it. He didn't know how long he would be staying in the sea race capital city, so there was no harm in maintaining a good relationship. The capital city was extremely large. There were laws that prohibited the royal family and those that weren't permitted to fly. If one walked or swam, they would waste far too much time on the road. Thus, short-distance transmission arrays had appeared. There were many of them, and they were distributed throughout the capital city. As long as one paid a small amount of spirit stones, one could freely use them. In this city at the bottom of the sea, there were many humans, and some were even living quite well. When they went out, they would be accompanied by sea race servants. Even so, they still didn't have the qualifications to use the transmission arrays in the capital city. It was said that this was a punishment that a long time ago a sea race emperor who had lost his beloved daughter had passed down to the humans. Regarding this, no sea folk dared to violate it. Even the capital city guard commander, Lord Meng Li, could only bitterly smile and shake his head. He apologetically turned and said, "Brother Ning, I'm really sorry. I'm afraid we can only choose a place nearby. But this area is at the edge of the capital city, and there aren't many good residences." The edge of the capital city was much better. Qin Yu had a sincere expression. "Big brother is too polite. I'm already satisfied to have a place to live." Meng Li sighed. "Then I'll have to trouble Brother Ning for now. Once Mr. Turtle returns, there will be proper arrangements. Perhaps there will be a day in the future when Brother Ning will be of use. At that time, don't blame me for being rude today." Qin Yu repeatedly said he didn't dare. He had a moved expression on his face, causing Meng Li to feel smug. It was true that he had to carefully receive the people that Mr. Turtle brought. But before determining just how important Qin Yu was, sending him a residence was far too expensive. Living in the capital city wasn't easy, in a place where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold. Even if Meng Li was skilled in making money, he still wouldn't dare to casually move around. Now, it seemed that this surname Ning had been fooled and wouldn't complain. That was good. If he left a good impression today, then even if this surname Ning became rich in the future, there would still be room to salvage the situation. Meng Li silently praised his own wisdom. Then he pretended to think about it and led Qin Yu outside. Moments later, they passed through a narrow alley. The two stopped outside a courtyard at the end and pushed open the door. The courtyard was small, but it was clean and tidy. There was a lush red coral growing there. Meng Li apologized a few more times. He said that he had official business to attend to and that he would come look for Brother Ning in a few days. After sending him out and watching Meng Li's tall and sturdy back disappear from sight, Qin Yu's smile faded and his expression became light. Who said that sea monsters didn't have brains? This Meng Li was actually quite astute. However, He didn't plan on staying in the sea race capital city for long. It didn't matter where he lived. The more remote he was, the less attention he would attract, and the more convenient it would be for him to move around. This was good. Closing the courtyard door, Qin Yu closed his eyes. His divine sense swept through the entire courtyard like silk. After a long time, he determined that there weren't any problems. Then he opened his eyes and entered the room, sitting down cross-legged. He had just entered the capital city today, so it wasn't good for him to rashly leave. He would first wait and understand a bit more before making any plans. It was obvious that it was very difficult for a human cultivator to openly leave the capital city. There was no sun or moon at the bottom of the sea, but the color of the coral would change according to yin and yang. When the red coral in the courtyard turned a cold blue, that meant that night had arrived. Shua! Qin Yu opened his eyes. He could already determine that there was no one watching him. It seemed that the old turtle didn't care about him at all, so he naturally didn't have any plans. This allowed Qin Yu to relax a little. It should be much easier to leave now. At this time, a faint howl sounded out in Qin Yu's ears. The air was a bit cold.